We want to welcome everyone out to the Highland City Council meeting here on Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. I know we have our city administrator, Aaron Wells, is online. There might be others that are also viewing, so we welcome everyone out. We will begin our meeting with an invocation by myself, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Kim Rodella. Our Heavenly Father, as we begin our city council meeting today, we're thankful for the opportunity we have to be able to gather together as a community and a city that we might be able to discuss those things that are pertinent that are on our agenda tonight. Help us be able to have our minds open and that we might be able to understand the different issues that are being presented tonight, that we might be able to make good, clear decisions that might be able to move our city forward. Heavenly Father, we also ask at this time, with it being there in the wintertime, that you also might be able to watch over those who will be traveling at different times, if it be with different weather conditions, that they all might be watched over and be safe as they travel through the different streets. And as the different kids go to school, that they might also be watched over. Help us as a community also to be mindful of those who are less fortunate than us, that we might be mindful of those who need help, that we might be able to reach out to them, if it be that they are needing emotional help or if they're needing other help. And this we say in the name of Christ, amen.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I look across our agenda tonight, we do not have any public hearings, but I know there's several residents here that would like to make comments, if it be on the Canal Boulevard, item number 6A. If you're welcome to do it during public comment, or if you'd like to wait until item number 6A, we'll also allow for the public to come up and make comments, even though it's just a communication item. But at this time, we do have time set apart for what's called unscheduled public appearances. If there's anyone who'd like to come up and address the council on any issue going on in the city, they're welcome to do that. If you'll please just state your name, we'd appreciate that. So at this time, we'll open up for unscheduled public appearances. Is there anyone who'd like to come up?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time. I'm here to address a pedestrian safety concern.
Excuse me, sir. Can you please state your name?
My fault. Gregory Hyatt. That's my name. It's located near the new park and Mountain Ridge. I think it's 5300 and 104th. The main road does not have a stop, but the other two do. And although there are painted pedestrian lines, there's no supporting lights or anything else to support pedestrians crossing. Over the summer, when my daughter was coming home from tennis practice, she had to wait for cars. No cars yielded for her until all of them were gone. This was for her was very frustrating, but to me, I felt like it was dangerous. With the addition to the park in the area, that beautiful new park, there's probably going to be an increase of foot traffic, especially children and families, our community members. And without some kind of a safety measure, like a pedestrian light or similar, that crossing, it remains unfriendly to pedestrians, maybe even hazardous. I'd just like to urge the council to think about a safety solution to protect our pedestrians at that intersection. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sorry for forgetting my name at the beginning.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comment.
Can we just let him know about the traffic toolbox so that he'll know how to submit that also?
Yeah, there is. So the city does have an application. If you'd like to make an application fee, that you can bring specifically any traffic mitigation issues that you see going on. I believe you were talking about one that was there by Walker Lane. Is that, I think the Walker Road there, is that kind of, I think is where you're talking about. But if you'd like to actually make an application, you're welcome to come in, fill it out. There is a $25 application fee, but then the council will have staff look specifically at that item. I think that's what your question was. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
I know that there are several people here for both the deer fencing and the Canal Boulevard items. Are those something that we're planning to allow public comment on during the items, or just to clarify for residents?
It was mainly just on Canal Boulevard. If there's several here on the deer fencing, it is a discussion item, and I'm okay also giving allowing comments.
Okay. So it sounds like folks on those two items can wait until the items rather than, okay.
So it's more pertinent to that specific item.
Also, Mr. Mayor, relative to the conversation about Walker Lane, we actually had already received a request about that area and intended to put up the flashing pedestrian signs. I'm not sure why that follow through hasn't happened. It was a few months ago, but I'll have Chris, I'll forward you the information that I've gotten. Will you make sure that that gets taken care of?
So the voice from the sky is our city administrator, Aaron Wells, if you're wondering who we're hearing. So Aaron, thank you. So what you're stating is that Walker Lane, which is, I believe, what you are addressing here by the new park, is something we're trying to address with some flashing. Is that correct, Aaron?
Yeah, because it's a mid-block crossing, he's absolutely right. Cars aren't normally looking for that. And so we, after we painted, we intended to put up flashing signs. It might have just been we wanted to get a lot of flashing signs in a lot of places. And I think that one just might have gotten overlooked. So we'll make sure to get those up.
So thank you for your comment. Sherry.
Yes. I'm not sure if you want me to wait till the item. I actually have some things to share about the planning conference I went to in the fall that has to do with this. And I don't want to take up a lot of the residents that live on Canal's time. So I thought maybe I would talk about this now and then.
You got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this last fall I attended the planning conference for the planning commissioners along with some of you that were there as well. And one of the last breakout sessions I went to, it was actually one of the best meetings I thought of the whole conference. They had an expert there who's been doing speed mitigation for many, many years, and he presented along with some of the Salt Lake City employees who actually work on speed mitigation. And they said that the speed mitigation department quite a few years ago was scrapped because of political reasons and is now being funded again, and that Salt Lake City has seen some great benefits after they've been allowed to redesign some problem roads. Some of the benefits that they included were reduced speeding, reduced accidents. It keeps the traffic flow because there are less accidents. It reduces the need for extra officers for traffic enforcement, which saves cities money, and the list goes on. Recently, I traveled to a touristy location, and all along the main road where there were residences, there were also speed tables all along the length of that road. These speed tables, or speed humps as they're called, were designed to keep traffic flowing, but flowing at the speed limit. I'm sure if you ask the tourists or others who don't live in this location, they would tell you that they don't like them because it slows them down. And I'm sure the locals didn't ask the tourists what they thought before they put them in, because they don't live off of that road. I watched the council meeting where this was discussed in the late summer. I think it was the last meeting that Andy was working here. He said that the temporary bumps had helped slow traffic, and if you asked the neighbors, they would concur. The neighbors off of this street were told that if the city moved the tables, they would think of another solution to put in their place. Andy then talked about speed bumps that don't slow traffic down as much as the tables, but keep people at the speed limit that is posted. And the neighbors on Canal liked that idea. And then I just want to close about the survey. When I first saw that on there and I saw the questions being asked, I thought, of course, nobody else is going to want these tables. They make you slow down a lot. They're inconvenient, but they do a lot of good. And I think a better question to ask on that survey would have been maybe a little explanation about why these were put there in the first place, maybe a list and number of how many accidents had occurred there, and then maybe said, you know, maybe instead of these speed tables, which kind of slow you down quite a bit below the speed limit, how would you feel about speed tables that keep you at the speed limit? And then you would have, I think, gotten a better understanding of what people think about them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to come address the council? Once again, we are going to be allowing and having comments for on the deer fencing and also on Canal Boulevard at the time when that comes up on the agenda. But if you'd like to address anything else, we invite you to come up to the council. Okay, seeing none, we'll now close the time for unscheduled public appearances. We'll now move on to our two consent items, consent item number 2A and consent item number 2B. Any,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull both 2A and 2B from consent.
you'd like to pull both, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. With that, we'll pull both of those, and we'll, Councilmember, if you wouldn't mind, Doug, if you'll tell us a little bit about, maybe we focus on 2A.
Yeah, for 2A, which is the January 7th minutes, I have two corrections. First, on page 5 of the minutes, which is under agenda item 3B, the proposed text omits HDC 571045A, which is the key reason for the proposed amendment. I propose adding the HDC 571045A immediately below the HDC 57104 heading. And you all have printed sheets that show that. The second item is that on page 6 of the minutes, agenda item 3B, the minutes incorrectly read that Councilmember Courtney stated it is his recollection that the law gave cities and counties the option of deciding whether to abide by the law. The current situation is that the city of Highland has chosen to abide by the law, but the county has not. I checked the recording, and what I said was to go with the expedited process. I propose striking both instances of the text abide by the law and replacing each with the text go with the expedited process. And I believe that our recorder has checked the recording for that.
So looking to our recorder, that has been confirmed, correct?
Yes, all of these proposed changes I've checked, and I agree with them.
Okay.
For both sets of minutes.
So is there any comments on number 2A, Council? Okay. What we'll do is then let's go to 2B, and maybe we ought to do, because we're going to have to specifically note the different changes, correct?
Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we could probably vote on both sets of minutes, just noting that the proposed changes as presented by Councilmember Courtney.
Are we okay with motions that way? Okay. We'll go ahead and go on to number 2B, Doug, and I think you had a couple comments on 2B.
All right, yeah, I have 4 corrections on the January 21st minutes. On page 2, under unscheduled public appearances, the draft minute stated that Councilmember Courtney stated he has also recommended the creation of a volunteer program, and this is a topic that will be discussed in the upcoming budget retreat. I reviewed the video from the meeting and confirmed that I did not say I had recommended the creation of such a program. So I propose to strike the text, he has also recommended the creation of a volunteer program and from the minutes. On page 9, agenda item 4A, according to the video, Rob did not say that Verizon found they needed a small tower, but rather that they were looking in a small area to put a new tower. Similarly, the narrow range of land was not the land lacking service, but the land where they were looking to put the tower. I propose striking the words small tower for a narrow range of land that is lacking service and replacing them with the words tower within a narrow range of land. On page 10, agenda item 5B, Jay Bachman is incorrectly identified as Assistant City Administrator, Community Development Director Patterson. I propose to correct that.
That was my favorite. I was trying to give him a new title.
And on page 11, agenda item 5C, the city of Elk Ridge is incorrectly identified as Elk Ridge. I propose to strike the word Elk Ridge and replace it with the words Elk Ridge.
Okay. Council, any comments on those?
I'd just like to say I appreciate Doug kind of doing the deep dive on the minutes. I tend to kind of look at the things that I said, and I always appreciate all that Stephanie does because she makes me sound better than I am. No, she's following the thing. I appreciate that. But on number 1, on the second set of minutes, didn't you think about creating the volunteer program?
I certainly have talked about it and proposed it. I didn't say that in the meeting.
Oh, okay. Because I thought you'd talked a lot about it.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I would love to do that and have talked about it. I just didn't say it during the meeting.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Okay. With that, do we have a motion with the corrected minutes?
I move to approve the January 7th, 2025 and January 21st, 2025 minutes with the amendments as discussed.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Doug, second by Scott. My understanding is our electronic voting is not up, correct? So we'll start down here with Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
And Ron.
Yes.
Okay, those minutes are approved 5-0. So whatever you see on the screen here is not correct. Okay, we'll now move on to our really only action item, which is item number 3A, which is an action item for Mayor Pro Tem. That will be myself. The reason I asked this to be put on the agenda is our current Pro Tem mayor is Councilmember Brittany Bills, has done a great job. She's been there for 3 years. This is not in reflect of Brittany not doing a good job. Not that we can't re-elect Brittany there. This was just more for the council to have the opportunity to say, hey, we've had a mayor pro tem. Would we like to make any changes or just keep as what we currently have? I know Doug had some concerns also about the mayor pro tem and has given some documents about how we elect a mayor pro tem, the timing and things that way. Doug, did you need to address anything about the mayor pro tem?
Yeah, if I could, I'm actually going to read this quickly rather than just
and maybe for the audience
wander through.
What a mayor pro tem is when the mayor is not present at the meeting, that's the person that will conduct it. Or if the mayor is not present at like a grand opening of a business or things, the mayor pro tem steps in for the mayor. They are acting as the mayor when the mayor is not there. Now it can be also that the mayor is sick or not doing his job, and the council then would say we're going to have a mayor pro tem step in.
UCA 10.3b 3022 specifies that if the mayor is absent or unable to act, the council may elect a mayor pro tempore. Because of this language, I had some serious concerns about our authority to elect a mayor pro tempore while Kurt is present, able, and willing to perform his duties. In fact, I intended to vote against any attempt to elect a mayor pro tempore this evening and to encourage the writs of the council to do likewise. That said, I found UCA 10.1.103, which requires the powers delegated in the Utah Municipal Code to be liberally construed, except in cases clearly contrary to the intent of the law. While I'm not entirely convinced with Rob's interpretation, I think clearly it falls within that bounds. It is not clearly contrary to the intent of the law. And because the law is ambiguous, I think we must construe the statute to include the interpretation. Note that I am still very concerned about the authority we vest in a single individual. According to the city attorney, it is the mayor pro tempore alone, advised by staff, who has the authority to decide if he or she should use the mayoral authority in any case. In other words, our mayor pro tempore is the only person who gets to decide that the mayor is unable or unwilling to serve. And state law provides no way for the mayor to take back this authority. I'm deeply concerned about giving the authority effectively to depose our mayor to any individual. My request to council is that we revise HMC 212040 to put some common sense restrictions on the position of mayor pro tem. In particular, a notification to council whenever the mayor pro tem assumes mayoral authority, and the requirement that council affirm any assumption of mayoral authority under the inability or refusal to act clause that continues beyond 48 hours. In the meantime, given UCA 10.1.103, I'm perfectly happy with electing somebody this evening, and we'll be doing so. We'll be voting to do so.
Okay, now I'm a little confused here. At one time you said you won't be voting in favor, but at the very end you said you are.
I said that initially I had intended not to, but then once I found the statute about the liberal construction of municipal code authority, that changed my opinion.
Thank you for your input.
In addition to that, I think any litigation that could come out of this would always go back and would look at legislative intent. And the legislative intent of this writing, even though I agree with Doug, it's poorly written, it's where you put the commas and what order you put those three phrases in, really kind of make a difference on what it is intending to say. And having said that, I believe we would get past any kind of a legal challenge that may come up, which has never come up in all the cities that are doing it currently the way we're doing it.
Scott, and I do, Rob, I would like to hear your comments on this as we go, but Scott, did you have a question or comment?
Well, again, I appreciate Doug just really looking at this carefully, but I agree with Ron. I think it's the legislative intent. My experience working with state statute and state law is there's a fair amount of ambiguity in a lot of things with different interpretations. That's why we have a city attorney to help us kind of wade through that. But I don't think there's ever been a problem. I think the closest we came to an insurrection is when Brittany Bills, we had an ice cream night.
And I wasn't here.
Twice, yes. So I understand the intent here and things. And Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit more?
Just to say, I agree with Councilmember Smith that the code is not well written. It's ambiguous, and I agree with Councilmember Courtney that it can be read in the way that Councilmember Courtney is suggesting. Maybe that's even the more literal interpretation, but I also believe that the other interpretation that we have been operating under, and most cities I've worked with have been operating under, is still a valid and reasonable interpretation, and I would not be concerned about the process we've been following. That said, if the council does want to set more rules about how the mayor pro tempore office, quasi-office functions and what limits there are, happy to, look at that and draft something to put in our city code. We have rules about, conflicts of interest and disclosures and things. We can do similar extra rules beyond state statute as the council wants.
So with that, I guess we have two options. One, to move forward. Well, I guess we have three. Don't do anything. And if we don't do anything, we stick with status quo with not electing a mayor pro tem. One is to go forth with electing a mayor pro tem, taking name nominations. Or three is going in and work on our own code to get it more specific in what a mayor pro tem would do.
And we could also elect or not elect and still do the code thing if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, my intent in requesting that was not that we put off an election, but that we take a look at that code down the road and see if we want to amend that.
Is the rest of the council amenable to moving forward with this mayor pro tem? Okay, with that, then I would be open for nominations for mayor pro tem.
I would like to nominate Kim Rodella.
I'll second.
Any further nominations? Okay, with that, we will now go to vote. We'll start with you, Scott.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Okay, that Kim Rodella is now mayor pro tem.
So, Mayor, I just ask a question? It seemed like I was on before she does her acceptance speech.
Get ready, guys. You got your pillow?
But it seemed like in the past when I've been on the council and different things, we've changed the mayor pro tem yearly.
Yes.
And but I think we've not been doing that for some time. And I really appreciate the service of Councilwoman Bill. She's done a great job. But I just wondered why we changed that, or is that just because
some of it I think is because we have overlooked in the past years not doing it. And so when it came up, I said, yeah, the council needs to chime in. As we talked about Councilmember Bills, there was never a time where I reached out to her, say, hey, I'm not going to be able to participate in this grand opening or at this city event or even at a council meeting that Brittany did not step up. And so I also want to publicly thank Brittany. I think as a mayor pro tem has done a great job. And I appreciate it because there's been times that, hey, you thought you maybe be back in town or you thought that. Now, I see a lot of mayor pro tems where you have Mountain Land Association of Government meetings with the county and there might be a conflicting city meeting at the same time. And so they'd send a mayor pro tem. I mean, a lot of different county events, I see mayor pro tems. And so it's, and like I said, going back, Brittany, I wanted to tell you thank you. You've done a great job as mayor pro tem. This had nothing to do with, was Brittany doing a good job or not? It was your comment, Scott. We hadn't done it for a little bit. So I felt the council needed to chime in on it. So now your acceptance speech.
I will bring ice cream next time. Okay.
Okay.
Kim, I have
That's
to
a
say, when I
commitment.
asked Rob last week, I don't think this is why this all came up, but he did tell me that you do not have the power to issue executive orders. That's what he said. I don't know where Doug will
It
tell you if
just
it's in code or
depends how
not.
you want to interpret that and the
Yes.
intent.
This is more of an opportunity for council to have different opportunities to go out. If you've served as a mayor pro tem, there's times that you're able to go to other county meetings or other events, and it gives that opportunity for a different type of service. And so the mayor pro tem, sometimes you have to run that meeting, which is not always the fun part, but a lot of times it's conflicting of schedules. And like I said, a lot of county events, like I have 2 on Thursday. And I have to, but if they would, the way they were scheduling or different things, you would have a mayor pro tem step in when you're not able to go to one of those. So with that, appreciate you doing that. Now we're going to go to an expedited item, which is number 4A, which is a resolution outlining flag status policy at Highland City facilities. Aaron, were you going to handle that?
Yes, I can do that, Mr. Mayor. Okay, just super briefly, I was just informed that apparently my slides disappeared. We seem to be having problems with our PowerPoint, but this one's really not complicated, Mayor and Council. Due to some recent questions, we wanted to outline an option or basically make it sure everyone is on the same page about how are we going to handle our flag status, whether it will be at half half staff or full staff. So this resolution just says that we follow the direction of the governor of the state of Utah, but it also gives deference to the mayor if the mayor sees fit to lower the flag for a period of local mourning. And that's what we intend to do.
I think some of those questions came up when we had President Carter pass. And I think the nation said we're going to lower the flags for the month of January. And then we had our state governor state that we'd like to have the flags raised during the inaugural of when the new president went in. And I think as we were looking at different flags, we saw, and this was mainly coming from Councilmember Courtney, we were seeing some inconsistency in how our flags were being done. And so I think this helps brings clarity to the issue.
So can we elaborate for the public which flags this? Obviously the flags in the city office building, Mountain or Highland Family Park. What's the other flag?
We have a flag at the cemetery, and then actually I had forgotten about this in the staff report. There's a flag at the fire station. So there's 4 on city property.
So this has to do with those flags.
Yeah, those with those.
Yep. It just gives us a policy for whose direction do we honor, right? Because to your point, Mayor, so there was actually a contradiction during President Trump's inauguration, right? There was a presidential order to have them at half staff because of President Carter's passing, but the state of Utah had ordered us to put them at full staff just for inauguration day. So this gives our deference to the state of Utah, the governor of the state of Utah, and then the mayor does have some abilities to do temporary half staff.
Okay.
I'm ready for a motion.
I think we all are.
Okay. I move that City Council adopt the 2025 resolution outlining flag status policy at Highland City facilities.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Kim, second by Doug. If there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and we'll start with you, Doug.
Yes.
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Brittany?
Yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 5-0. We'll now move on to our next item, which is a discussion item only, so will not be, the rest of the items are not votes. They can give direction and things that way. But item number 5A, which is deer fencing, and Councilmember Courtney has placed this on. Now, I believe this is coming from some emails we received from residents about some deer issues this winter, and then you've asked to have it come on about some fencing regulations specifically around, I think, garden areas.
Yeah, around gardens and orchards, and specifically looking to decide if council is interested in expanding the set of exemptions. We have exemptions for athletic courts that allow taller fencing. We have exemptions adjacent to athletic complexes. We have exceptions for adjacent to golf courses. Is this something that we'd like to pursue? And if so, there are several options listed in here that we probably should make some choices about before telling staff to draft something.
I guess I'll comment on this. I don't think changing fence height for deer population is something I would like to pursue, just because when we set precedent in this, then and changing fence heights for certain situations, then it tends to snowball into other situations. And so we have standard regulations for fence height, and I just don't want to set any precedent for that. But with that said, also, I think that this is an issue we need to work on. I know that staff has a solution for it. It's just working on executing that solution.
Just an observation that we don't need to change the height in order to potentially address the issue with changing the fence ordinance. We could potentially want to keep the height the same, but allow different materials, for example.
This is an issue that we've addressed repeatedly because it has become more of a problem over the years. 10, 12 years ago, we addressed the issue because I've lived in Highland 36 years now, and I never had any deer problems in my property until we'd lived here 10 years. And I had to kind of smile because when we discovered the deer, our yard was in an IHC garden tour, and the deer in the middle of the tour came and ate all the roses off, which was kind of unfortunate. I thought my daughter went out and cut them all off. But anyhow, we've had a lot of problem with deer in my neighborhood. In fact, we don't have to aerate our backyard because there's so many deer in there aerating it all the time. And deer do strange things. It's hard to predict them. I had some fruit trees. I've got fruit trees. And one year we had a lot of apples, and I thought, if they eat the apples, not a big problem. But they didn't eat the apples. They went over to my new peach trees and ate all the leaves off of them to kill them. And it's a frustrating thing for a lot of citizens in Highland. And so the solution we had is we worked with Humphreys, who did a bow hunt in the city, and they kind of tracked where the deer were in different places, and we culled the herd. So the goal wasn't to eliminate the herd, but to cull it down, because we were having problems 10 years ago with one of our smaller fire trucks hit a deer, $6,000 worth of damage. And there were a lot of problems that way. And I'm sure everyone in this room's had some issues with deer. Everybody has a different opinion. So I'm not sure what the solution is. The hesitation I have with the deer fences is, how do you define those? And does then it become a reason for everybody to put up a 12-foot fence? How do you, I just don't know how to work through that. The city came up with a nice idea last year, I thought, but I think the first attempt to execute it didn't turn out real well, but I think we learned a lot from that. And I would kind of support that. First of all, I'm not opposed to deer fencing, but I'm just, it's just kind of like sometimes when we pass things, and I like to do things for individual families, but then everybody's on board after a while, and then you have 12-foot fences all over the city. So I'm a little hesitant about just jumping into this without looking at it a little more carefully. So I use a combination of things with deer. I use some deer sprays. I have some motion-activated sprayers. We have pretty good food garden every year. We still have a lot of deer. We've got a neighbor that loves the deer, and she opens up her gate into the Highland Glen Park and invites the deer to come in, and we all deal with it. But so I'm not sure what the exact answer is. So that's kind of, I'm real aware of this. I deal with it on a yearly basis. So I just like to hear other comments. And
how about we do this? How about,
Yeah.
Chris, I don't know, our city engineer maybe can share with what we're doing as a program. We know we have some residents here that would like to make comments. Maybe have them, and then we can bring it back to council on some others. So Chris, maybe kind of give a little bit what the city does for deer mitigation at this time.
So right now, we have got some cages basically that we can use to capture deer. I want to say that it's a 6-week or 4-week window, just towards the tail end of summer, early fall, that we can do that. We've gotten those from a DNR to do that. We had one request last year. We did place one a week before the window ended. So when we did that, we didn't stake it down properly. We did go by daily to, one of our employees drove by, took a look, didn't see anything until Sunday when the trap had obviously been sprung at that point. We're not sure if the animal sprung it or if someone else let it out or exactly what happened. The resident was not happy. We removed it Monday, the next day, and got it out of there and never reset it since then. They had some training, I think, in July last year. I think, training is only as good as how, if you exercise it. So I think now, like Councilmember Smith said, we've learned some lessons from there that could probably help us go forward. if we continue to place these. I think one of the concerns we had is that very possibly it could have been a buck that had been caught, and we have been asked not to euthanize the bucks, so it may not have been removed. It might have been set free if that had been the case. So, but that's an option for us to continue with.
Now, Councilmember Smith brought up about Humphreys, because I know at one time we had an outside service that was helping us. A lot of the residents probably didn't know we were going through and calling the deer, because we were getting so many hit on the highway years back that we were one of the few cities that had a deer,
Abatement program, yeah.
Abatement. And so with that, now I know that program kind of changed and we went to now city employees. Are we seeing differences where we haven't been using Humphrey and now we're using city employees or anything that way?
I know Humphreys stopped doing that and was no longer available to help us with deer abatement. I haven't heard of any abatement being done by city employees. I'm just not aware of it. I kind of think that has ended with Humphreys.
That might be one of the issues. Erin, are you still on? She's not.
Yes, I am, Mayor. Sorry.
So, Erin, I thought we were having, once Humphreys said they couldn't do this, I thought we were having we had some of the city employees that approached and said they felt comfortable enough doing some of this. Were they able to do that, or what's been the process there?
Well, what Chris outlined is the new process. So if you remember, Humphreys was more quote unquote proactive in that they would go out they'd place the traps on city property, and we're getting, Stephanie could tell you, but between like around 15 a year, I'm thinking is the more recent stats, but they had a few traps set up and they were more proactive. Our program is reactionary in that because we only place it on private property. And so a resident has to tell us, yes, I want it on my property. They sign a waiver, we go out and place it. So it's the same principle of the program, but we're just executing it differently because truthfully, this is a really time consuming process. And so we didn't think that it was appropriate for staff, at least to be more proactive in this. And, and we tried to I was thinking that council was aware of that. We had this conversation previously, but maybe we weren't clear in the differences between the programs.
Questions council has of staff or anything before we have the public come up and make comments? Okay, at this time, if there's any public that would like to come up, if you'll please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. Anyone would like to come up and address us?
My name's Luann West. Thank you for listening to our concerns about the increasing damage that we're experiencing due to the large number of urban deer living in our city. We're looking to you to implement effective measures to significantly reduce the number of deer in Highland. We've always had occasional deer in our yard in the 13 years that we've lived here, but over the last 2 years, the numbers have increased dramatically, and so has the damage. We've had up to 5 bucks and 8 does in our yard that we've had to chase out, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. And of course, when we're not home, they eat whatever they want. We've had multiple damage to fruit trees, breaking off branches to get to the fruit, stripping the bark off of young trees. We had 2 large raised beds for strawberries, and not only did they eat all the strawberry plants, but they literally jump into the beds, damage the wood, and displace the soil. They've eaten green beans, strawberries, pumpkins, pears, peaches, raspberries, blackberries, rose bushes, tomato plants, kale, landscape plants. A couple weeks ago, we even saw them in the backyard eating mint, which supposedly is a repellent for deer. We've searched online for suggestions to try to keep deer out of our garden and orchard and have implemented them with absolutely no success. And even the ones we haven't tried, neighbors have tried with no success. There are possibly 3 solutions, and one is to install the deer fencing. You mentioned 12 feet. I think what people are asking for is 8 feet. I know some people aren't excited about that. None of us really want to have our houses looking like a prison. So the next solution would be to reduce the number of deer within the city boundaries. I know the city implemented the traps last year. We were actually the people that had the traps in our backyard. We had both traps, not just one. The city never came and checked the traps because one of them was had been trapped, or the trap had been sprung the first night and nobody ever reset it. The next, on Sunday morning, around 7 o'clock, a large buck went into the second trap, and we were already gone for the day. A neighbor saw it and told us that for about an hour he thrashed around until he got out of the trap. They were not staked down properly. When I talked to DWR, they said that when they did the training, they explicitly said that the T-poles had to be in all four corners to stake it down or the deer would get out. So unless the program is implemented more effectively, it's useless. The other way would be to reinstate the bow hunter program, which I think would be the most effective and efficient way to reduce the numbers. It's frustrating that if there's a stray dog in the neighborhood, you can call animal control and they'll come and pick it up. But if you call the city and say, I have dozens of deers destroying my yard, they say, sorry, there's nothing you or I can do about it. Because of the limitations that the city has placed on residents, we're no longer able to protect our property from damage, and we hope that you'll support us in finding ways to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve West. I'll just add one comment to what my wife said. The other problem we have with the deer trapping program is it starts in August and ends in October, first week of October, I think, which for all gardens is too late. By the time you get to August, everything's already in harvest, and that's when the deer are having gourmet meals every day. So just take that in consideration too as we kind of think about a path forward. Thanks.
Ray Halls. Hi, Doug, our former neighbor. I would just like to say that we do have a deer problem in our neighborhood, but I think everybody in Highland has a deer problem. So that I'm totally empathetic with. What I oppose is 8-foot or 12-foot fences around the neighborhoods. But I'd like to suggest another couple of things that we might be able to do if they're not already on the city ordinance, and that is that nobody in Highland should be feeding deer with hay or grain or putting out salt blocks or anything like that. If anything like that is happening and it's not on the city ordinance, I think you folks need to be thinking about a possible ordinance to prohibit that. The other thing that I think that you need to consider is that for people who have large pieces of property, a couple of acres and so on, and that acreage is not well taken care of, meaning that they water it, but they don't, they water the acreage, but they let the grass grow to 4 feet high, and then they don't cut it in the fall. And at least in our neighborhood, anybody who cuts their grass, they don't have the deer problems, meaning that the deer aren't living there. They're passing through, maybe eating a little bit, but they're not staying there and finding that the grass allows them to be hidden during the day or other times. So I suggest a city ordinance that requires property owners to keep their grass down, especially if they're watering it during the summer so that the grass can grow 4 feet high. And that's just my input. But I would also like to say that the Wests have an absolutely beautiful garden. And they have a couple of neighbors that might go over occasionally and steal a pumpkin or two. So there needs to be something done about neighbor residences also. Thank you.
Anyone else like to come to address the council on this issue? Okay, let's bring it back to council on this is a discussion item to maybe give some feedback on what you'd like to have staff look at or things of that nature.
I just want to say I love when the residents come up and they give us solutions, because really when it comes down to it, you guys know what is the best solution for the problems that you're having. So some of the solutions you talked about were the fence, increasing the height of the fence. And I think there are a few problems with that, but the second solution was making sure that we implement the program better that we have right now. And I think that we need to do that. Take this suggestion also. I'd love to know the months in which that program should be implemented, if we need to extend those months in order to preserve the gardens as well. And then the Humphrey program, from my recollection, they aren't offering that program anymore. That's why we're not doing it. So we can't do that solution. But also I like the solution of maybe doing an ordinance saying, don't feed the deer, and then also cutting down on the grasses on those properties.
Going off of what Kim said, is there a reason the program is only done in those months? Is that like DWR says that?
That is DWR directives, that's the only time frame that
What
they would
what
allow
we're
it.
trying to call are the deer that live in the area. I believe that they're coming through migratory deer, then we're not trying to capture them. Does that or eliminate them? So that I think it's during those months is what DWR has kind of said. Hey, this is where you have deer that live in the area that you need to call down. But if like right now, I actually had a neighbor text me, and then I had my lawn fertilized. But I had 9 deer just last week in my front yard. And so all of us are dealing with kind of what you're dealing with. But in the winter or in the summer, I don't see them as much. But for some reason, I'm seeing a heavier. Now when we did have Humphreys, it appeared that it had started. The hitting on the road had kind of dropped, things that way. So Chief Williams, are we seeing more deer hit on the road? I mean, occasionally we see them off the side. Have you noticed any uptick that way? I mean, because that's some safety issues also.
Yeah, I haven't seen an uptick, but we haven't been watching it or studying it either. So it's not been our experience, or I haven't noticed an increase in deer that are.
So if a deer gets hit on the road, you call DWR. Is that what the process
Correct.
is?
Yeah. Once we take the accident report, if there's damage to the vehicle, we'll take the accident report. We'll notify DWR to have them come and retrieve the deer.
Okay. So let's go back. I think, like you mentioned, Kim, we've got some good comments from residents. Is there some things you'd like to have staff look about implementing?
Well, the Humphrey program with the bow hunters and the way they set it up is no longer available, but there are more than bow hunters in this area than that just associated with Humphreys. I'm wondering if we could reach out and see if there's any interested people that could to do that, because that was very successful. I know they the first year, I believe, if I remember correctly, they took out 85 deer.
Yeah, it was heavy.
Yeah, and I like the deer and different things, but there's just so much damage to yards. And if you're a gardener, it's just awful. So I think we shouldn't necessarily say bow hunting is off the table, but there's got a lot of safety issues with that. So the Humphreys monitored certain areas with cameras and that, and they were very careful, because what we don't want is a citizen to get shot. Because I used to worry, because I used to run through that area, and I thought, I always wore red.
You didn't have your antlers.
Yeah, I didn't bring my antlers that day. So, but I think that shouldn't be off the table either, because that's actually the most effective program.
Mayor,
if there's
can
a way, yeah.
Can I speak to that really quick over here? I was heavily involved when we brought Humphreys in to cull the deer, and we were very selective on the individuals that were allowed to hunt within the city. A, because of the safety reasons, but
Right.
two, what we want to avoid is a wounded or injured animal that has an arrow stuck into it, wandering into somebody's yard, or heaven forbid into a elementary school. It just creates and causes problems. So if we decide to go that route, I'm assuming that you would involve us, and we can find those skilled archers that would be able to do what we did before.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, I'll tell you, when Humphreys were here, I don't think a lot of residents knew we were doing it. I mean, I think that was we were taking care of things, but I think it was not that noticeable, even though, because I know when I got on, I'm going, we're doing what with deer? But you start to hear that we're harvesting 20 deer a year, and we never heard from anyone that was happening.
Yeah, so
They
the
must have
the first year we did this, we harvested, I believe, between 70 and 90 deer, and we didn't receive any calls the first year. In the 5 or 6 years that we were involved with Humphreys in doing that, we received 1 call, and that's because one of the hunters left his hide in an area, and somebody stumbled upon this, what they thought was a homeless camp. So they were very skilled. It didn't cause us any problems. We were in communications with them every time that they went out to cull a herd or take an animal. We knew that they were there, and it worked out very well. So if we decide to move that direction in the future, I would just like to have that same kind of communication.
So Chief, Humphreys we know has an archery center here in the area. Were there others out there that we could also turn to other than Humphreys you've noticed? Or?
I think there are others that we can turn to. It's not necessarily Humphreys. Those are the ones we worked with at the time. But I do think you would probably find residents here in the city that do have that type of skill, and we could work with in order to do that.
Are there
Why
any
did
other
Humphreys-
cities that still have a program like that? I know that we were the first.
Yeah, we were the first, and I had many calls from many of my colleagues throughout the state wondering how we put this together, and we probably help at least a half a dozen other cities put that together who probably helped other cities put that together, but I know that we let out on that program. Are there still cities in the state that are currently doing it that way? I don't know.
Just to provide a little bit more context, Council, one of the reasons we no longer, that Humphreys no longer offers the program is it was very difficult for him to get archers to do it that time of year, because my understanding is, I'm sorry, I'm not a hunter, but that's also season elsewhere, right? And so it was kind of more of a where the hunter is going to be type of an issue. Like like Chief Williams said, we're happy to reach out to somebody other than Humphreys. It's also a very time-consuming process because the deer cannot be discarded. If we euthanize the deer, the meat has to be donated, which means you have to do some prep work on the animal. Which, all in all, when staff estimated the time of the euthanization, doing the prep work on the animal, and then taking the animal to a butcher to complete the process, it was going to be about a half a day time for a staff member. And so that's another reason that we decided to go to more reactive approach rather than proactive. So in the recent years, Humphrey was actually doing more trap and euthanization than they were archery anymore. So because of all of the constraints that I just mentioned. Again, we're happy to explore with other private companies, but just know that that was kind of the issues we were up against. You also have to take lymph nodes and some other samples down to an office in the south part of the county as a part of this program with DWR. And so it sounds like it sounds easier than I think it is when you get into the nuts and bolts of it.
It's got to be quite a bit.
Just doing some research, it looks like Highland City was the only city that was doing this program. It was a pilot program. In order to do it, we had to have an ordinance on there saying that, citizens aren't allowed to feed deer. But I just think, let's explore and see if there's any other organizations that are willing to do it. And then number two, let's work on implementing the program we already have in place, and then we can go from there.
I agree. To me, allowing an exception for fencing is sort of a last-ditch option. If we've got other good options, absolutely, let's pursue those first. That I could see myself being in favor of a 6 or an 8 foot net fencing for gardens or orchards, for example. Perhaps temporary just during given seasons. But if we really have an option of looking into the bow hunting again, all in favor of that.
Another thing we might want to consider is we have 2 legislators from the city of Highland, and maybe they need to look at state code. Because, I know why the deer are protected, but at the same time, maybe the rules are too stringent, especially when we're trying to build more and more and more housing. I just think maybe our legislators need to look at this, because we're not the only city that has this problem. And I think it's a real problem if you try to have a home garden or try to take care of your yards, because, I hate to be harsh about the deer, but we kind of think they're giant rodents in many cases. So I don't know. I think maybe contact our legislators and say, hey, this is a problem you ought to look at, besides the other 125 bills you always put on us every year.
Just knowing about the legislative, we're in the middle of a legislative session now, and trying to say, hey, can you put a bill on now? We're already probably behind where they've already had things written in committees. But I think, Scott, when you bring in, it could be something as they get done when we have a legislative report.
Right.
It could be something, because, hey, will you put this as an ordinance maybe to look at, or something?
Look
in
at,
the state code?
revise the state code.
Yeah.
Although they pass everything the last week anyway, so.
They did what?
I say they pass everything the last week anyway.
We call it the Miracle Week. So.
On the fencing, I totally agree that it is a last resort, but I don't want to eliminate it from us looking at it. It doesn't mean we'll end up wanting it, but in my own situation, I live where deer come through my property all the time. I'm fenced, and they do not jump the fence to go back where my garden is and where I have fruit trees and stuff. So I'm grateful that way. But just three houses from me is a cul-de-sac, and on the end of that cul-de-sac, the house is up against one of the canals going through there, ditches, and the other side of that is the golf course. And he's inundated with deer. And to think that maybe he could put up an 8-foot or a 12-foot even fence, a netting or something, I know it would benefit him in that one home, in that one instance. The only way I would ever support something like that is if it could be written in such a way that it would be limited to those kinds of circumstances, not just everybody with a garden being able to put something like that in. But there are circumstances. I look at where he's at, it's mostly trees, so he'd have to take some trees out to even put the fence up. But I believe he's talked to me many times about the deer problem, and I know he would be willing to put a fence up. So I don't want to discard the fence. I do want it as a last resort, but I would hope if we do it that we could put some parameters around it so that in limited circumstances, and it just doesn't become citywide, that everybody has an 8 or 10, 12-foot fence.
Has anyone reached out to any other cities to see what they've done to try to help mitigate? Now, I'll be with the mayors on Thursday and again on Friday morning. I can ask some of them. I mean, I'll be with Draper and with Alpine and that, and I can talk. Even Pleasant Grove would have that up in their hillside. I can talk with them and say, hey, what have you done fencing, or if they've done fencing, what have you done? We here, we're one of the only ones that have done the calling program. We've had cities reach out to us about our program, that they wanted to mirror our program. So I know there's other cities having the issue. It's just how are some doing it? So what we've heard is that we'd like to have it, for staff, if we can have you look in, if there's someone that can pick up how Humphreys have done it. Because it seemed that we weren't getting as much complaints back from the Humphreys. Then if not, we need to then look at other, maybe we come back to the fencing, we can see what other cities are doing to try to mitigate. To me, the netting seems more of a plan than a fence. Does that mean?
Yeah.
And so
I agree with that. I also really like the possibility of the archery, the bow hunt. I've been a bow hunter, and the deer are very safe when I'm the bow hunter. So it'd have to be somebody different than myself. And the reality is that I believe that if we've got a situation that we knew worked, so somehow we've got to figure out a way to get back to that.
I agree with that.
Mayor, there's somebody in my neighborhood who works for DWR, so I'll contact him as well and see what he's seen successful and what ideas he has as well.
Well, and your neighborhood would be a big one because you're right up against the mountain. So yours.
Yes, deer, mountain goats, skunks,
raccoons,
snakes,
peacocks.
Is that where the peacock went? Was up in your?
That's your neighborhood, Doug. We're good there.
They ended up in yours.
That's true. Did they really?
They did.
Just because Doug brought up the peacock, did we ever find out where the peacock went?
Yes,
No.
They showed up at the animal shelter, and they moved them to the South Animal Shelter. There's 4 of them that got moved down there. We get interesting things at the animal shelter, I promise you.
They won't take my skunks, though.
That's because they're busy taking all the rabbits from Lehigh.
Okay. With that, is there any other discussion that needs to have on the deer fencing?
Can I just say one thing more? I think it'd be nice to put a timeline. So we have a discussion, but it's easy to go back on the back burner because the city staff has so much to do. But if we could kind of put a timeline, because it'd be nice to have some sort of plan evolving by early summer and kind of get something nailed down.
Should we say by the end of June at least we have it as another discussion item, and we have it as if we know that, because that would be heading into the hunting season, that we had the plan in place. As council, is that soon enough?
If some of these things won't work, then we need to readdress the fence issue like Ron said.
Okay. So we have it'd be an action item. I know we have the budget at the end of June, but that would probably be, we'd also like to have that reported at budget time, what the solution is for this deer fencing. So, and Chris, I'm looking at you because I know that's the staff that you kind of work with. So, okay, well now.
Mayor, can I just make a quick comment? I worked with the deer program for the last several years until we handed it over to Public Works. So I worked a lot with Humphreys. One thing that you need to realize is that whatever program that you set up has to be okayed by the DWR. They're the ones who set the months that you harvest deer. They set how you harvest deer. So that's why we're under the regulations that we are right now with our program. It's because that's what DWR has said. This is how you can run your program. This is how we'll give you your certificate if you will run our program this way. So if we want to make changes to how we do our program, if we want to go back to a bow hunt, we'll just need to run that through DWR and see if they will give us a certificate to run the program that way.
So how long of a time do we need for DWR?
I would probably address it a little bit before June, because if you're talking you want to start harvesting deer in August, we'd need to adjust our certificate of registration with DWR. So I would even start talking about this as early as February, March.
That's
next
now.
year. Well, yeah, we should, if we want to make changes, we probably need to start talking about it now.
So by the middle
For
of
next
April,
year.
maybe we say that we need to have a solution if we have someone that would be willing to do it similar to Humphreys.
Or like I say, everything's going to have to be run through DWR, and they're very picky about who they will let, especially if you're going to do a bow hunt. I think they'll be pretty picky. So
And we have to work with DWR. We can't come with the program ourselves.
we cannot. No.
Okay. So maybe we better bring it back that end of March, 1st of April. That gives us about a month to go find a solution on that. Okay. We'll now move on to communication items. We have communication item number A, which is Canal Boulevard, which is traffic calming. Chris has a presentation put together. So let's kind of look at our time. What we'll do, let's have maybe Chris go through part of that presentation. Then we're going to have some public comment. Then we'll bring it back to maybe for staff or for council to ask questions, that maybe the residents have brought up, and for Chris. And then we can kind of have further discussions about what we'd like to do with Canal Boulevard.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So background, we're here to talk about the traffic calming plan that the city has tried to implement last year, so that when residents have concerns, they can submit the request to the city and we can go out and take a look at it. And so we have been looking at some of the issues that we've had along Canal Boulevard, specifically, well, it's really along the entire distance between North County Boulevard and 6800 West. The studies that we've done so far are just in that middle section between Alpine Highway and 6000 West. So I just included a copy of a map of Highland City that shows some of the road designations throughout the city, including the collector, the neighborhood collector, and UDOT roads, and local roads. And you'll see on that map that Canal Boulevard is showing it to be a collector road. And I've also included our collector road speed limits, and you can see that 10400 to the north is a 35 mile per hour road. Canal Boulevard is shown as a 30 mile per hour road, and then 9600 north to the south of there is shown as a 25 mile per hour road. This is just a map that showed some spacing for connecting roads that go east to west. This is a slightly older map that had been produced by MAG that I think was prior to Canal Boulevard actually being extended and finished out the way it has right now. So the pilot program that we did, we included a couple of temporary speed tables shown on the attached map at the red locations. We also put out traffic speed counters as shown on the attached map. You don't want to see exactly what the speed is at the speed tables because that may not be indicative of what road speeds are elsewhere on the road. This is a table that shows the results of the speed data. The one table was put in March, and the second table was put in May. You can see that some of the average speeds were around 34 to 35, and they went down to about 34 to 33. I think, decided after I looked at some of these tables that some of this looks a little bit confusing. We also took some data for the 85th percentile speeds to see what is 85% of the vehicles on that road are doing. And you can see that the averages kind of went from about 38, 39 down to about 37. And then we also measured how many vehicles were going more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So these are vehicles that are going 40 or above. And you can see some of those initial ones were really high double digits, all of them, between 9.3 and 23. I've summarized all those. I've just averaged out instead of having east, west, north, south, to make it a little bit more apparent. So the average speeds that we had on that original study were about 35 and a half or 35 and a quarter. When we put in the speed tables, it went from 35 and a quarter down to 33. In the 2 weeks after the speed tables were removed, it went to 33 and a half. So it went up a little bit, and then again we measured them about 2 weeks ago, and they went and they've continued to go up to where they're about 34 and a quarter. The 85th percentile started out about 39 and a quarter. It dropped by almost 3 miles per hour with the speed tables in place.
Because can you explain once again the
85th percentile represents what 85% of the vehicles are doing, what the speeds that they're going.
So, okay, I'm confused. Your average speed, and we're just looking at this, is 35.25, but you're saying 85% are going 39.2.
No, 85% is that the 85th percentile is that 85% are going that speed or less.
Or less, yeah. Yeah, good
That's
clarification.
Why it's kind of the confusion.
Yeah. Sorry. I knew what I meant. I just didn't say it. So after the speed tables were removed, that increased to 37 and a half. So it went up another 1 mile per hour. And since that time, it's increased another half a mile per hour. And then when we look at the 10 mile per hour over the speed limit, I think that's where we see the biggest impact that the speed tables gave us, is it went from 16 and a quarter as an average down to 4.7% of vehicles were going 40 or more. Once the speed tables were immediately removed, it went up to 6 and a quarter, and then again, just a couple weeks ago, it's continued to climb up to about 8.2.
So that last row are percentages, and the top two are miles per hour.
Correct.
Okay.
We also wanted to take a look at the speed traffic numbers that were on 10400 and 9600, because one of the concerns that we had was that by implementing these speed tables on Canal Boulevard, it might be driving traffic to those other streets as alternative routes. If you take a look at 10400 with speed tables, the count was about 48, just almost 4,900. It dropped down after the speed tables were removed, about 43. Canal Boulevard, it went up slightly by about just over 100 vehicles, and then 9600 North, after the speed tables were removed, those numbers went up. I think one thing, as we look at when these counters were out with the speed tables, it was towards the beginning of October. One thing that was noted in the report was that during that time frame, Mountain Ridge Junior High School held 2 choir concerts and a student movie night. So they said that when you look at the throughout the day, the traffic counts, it was particularly the evening counts that were higher in that time. And so their thought is why we see a decrease isn't necessarily because people were going back to Canal Boulevard because the speed tables were removed, but just because of what was happening at the junior high. I think their total kind of conclusion was that it hadn't really affected or really impacted those other streets, 10400 and 9600. One thing that I noted and want to point out to the council, when we look at the percentage of vehicles that were 10 miles per hour over or greater, if we look at the bar graph to the right, you can see that the red on top are vehicles that are traveling more than 10 miles per hour. Predominantly, the biggest bulk of those is happening or was happening between midnight and 6 a.m. when you don't get a lot of vehicles on the road, and people are probably more likely to go a little bit faster because they're the only ones out there. But it is fairly consistent that it does kind of stay fairly high throughout the rest of the day. And if we look at the bar graph to the right, that's kind of a compilation of the 85th percentile speeds versus the speed limit, with the speed limit being shown at 30 as the red dotted line. You can see that the combined average speeds were at 34.8, and the 85th percentile speed was at 38 miles per hour. That's kind of important because kind of a general rule of thumb is when we look at speeds, we look at the 85th percentile to determine what we want to do, what sort of how how extensive is the problem? So if the 85th percentile speed is more than 5 miles an hour over the set speed limit, you want to start looking at some passive traffic calming solutions. If it's more than 10 miles per hour, you want to start looking at more active traffic calming solutions. So we're at 8 miles over. It's definitely more than 5. It's approaching the 10 miles over. We also got some traffic accident data from Lone Peak Safety. Between North County Boulevard and 1600 West, between 2020 and 2025, today's date, we had 55 accidents that were reported.
That's between Alpine Highway and North County.
North County and 6800 West.
68?
Yes.
Well, that's the full length.
The
Okay,
full
the full length has
this
55.
This is the full length.
That's the entire.
That's the 55. The biggest number that we had were on the east section. So between Alpine Highway and North County Boulevard, 42 of the 55 were in that section. The kind of the midpoint, most of these centered around 6,000 west. We had about 7. And then west of there, we had 5. These numbers have changed since we looked at it earlier, Mayor, because we realized that some of the traffic accidents had been recorded on Madison and not on Canal Boulevard. So originally we saw that there's only 1 or 2, and we know from residents that there'd been more than that. So I think
5 represents Madison.
It includes Madison. Yep. So kind of going back to our traffic calming handbook, we've listed out a number of both passive and active measures that are recommended in the handbook that we would want to consider for these instances. We also have looked at some of the pedestrian and bicycle safety options that we would have along there. It's important to note that often one single measure will not result in reduced speeds. Combining multiple passive and active traffic calming measures creates a cumulative effect on speed reduction. That's taken verbatim from our traffic calming handbook. It wasn't me saying that. But one thing that we'd like to start working on immediately is on the kind of the west section of Canal Boulevard. We have Mitchell Trail that we're currently designing, and right now it's got what I would kind of say pedestrian chicanes that do stick out into the roadway, and they've got some candlesticks on both sides. It looked like, as I drove by recently, that some of them have been ran over, so we'll want to replace them. But I would like to add rapid flashing beacons to our Mitchell Hollow Trail program that we have that's currently being funded.
Is that when you push the button and then you're crossing, or is that, okay?
You do have to push the button.
Okay, just making sure.
Yes, and in talking to our street superintendent, he had gotten phone calls from a resident who told him it was broken several times at another one that we had, and found out he just never pushed the button. So it's not automatic. It doesn't have a sensor on it.
Are there designs out there that have a motion sensor that if you're standing there, it's going to go on?
I don't know that I've ever seen one.
I have never been to one, but it just seems intuitive that why not?
But the deer might set it off. So
it's intuitive, but it's intuitive to push the button. I mean, everyone knows push a button.
Yeah, the concern I'd have with motion sensing is that you get false positives, and you don't have to get too many of those people, or people just stop paying any attention to the lights.
So like I said, so far we've taken a lot of traffic data in that central section between Alpine Highway and 6,000 West. I really think that data that we've collected may not be indicative of the Canal Boulevard in its entirety. I think we need to get better data for that west section between 6,000 and 6,800, and I'd like to get some counters out. I've already talked to our streets department about getting those set. I'd also like to get additional data on that east section from Alpine Highway to North County Boulevard, because depending on the traffic behaviors, there may be different traffic calming solutions that we want to approach for each section. So that's what I would suggest as our next step is let's get some more data. I know people want to see things happening, and I want to get things to happen. I just want to make sure that what happens is going to have the best chance of solving the issues that we're seeing. I do want to move forward with designing and trying to get some rapid flashing beacons installed at not just Mitchell Hollow Trail, but the other one that's just off of Alpine Highway that's near the Murdoch Canal Boulevard, that trail crossing there. I want to also get additional data from Lone Peak Safety to see what kind of accidents we're having on other streets, 10400 and 9600 specifically, to see how this compares. When I saw the 55 accidents, to me that seemed like a really high number. But I'm just curious how it compares to other roads that we have in our community. And then because there has been a lot of, I think, frustration on the parts of our residents, we want to make sure that we are bringing this back or communicating with these residents. We'd like to bring this back in April. The results gives us 2 months to kind of get some additional data, get it processed, and come back.
And you are looking at Madison Avenue and 6800, a crosswalk there, possibility with lights.
Possibility of lights. We'll look at everything. Yep.
What happened, Ron, when we started looking at the data, we recognized we were really focused from Alpine Highway to 6000. But when we started looking at things, we recognized we didn't have really good data from 6000 to 6800, which brings in Madison Avenue. And so we're going, okay, hold it. I know that's probably, and we'll hear from some residents, but that's probably, we have 3 corridors. We've got the one that's from North County to 6000, which is where we're seeing a lot of accidents. I assume, Chief Williams, the accidents are probably mainly at the intersections at, if there's an accident at North County Boulevard and Canal and 6000, that's probably being picked up in that data, right? Because I know you're the one providing the data. On
Yeah,
accidents.
it will grab that, but we do have incidences along the stretch as well, not just at the intersection.
But what's been your experience from 6000 west to I guess it would be from Alpine Highway to 6000? I know we've had some accidents where they've gotten up in the yards and hit trees and some things that way. We're familiar with those.
Yeah, those are being gathered. Those are included. Is that your question?
Yeah, I mean that's in the data, right?
Yes.
But then from 6000 west to 6800, what's been your experience?
So, well, obviously that's been completed within the last couple of years. We've had a few accidents along that route. We had a fence that was completely obliterated on the south side of the road a couple of months ago. Well, 3 or 4 months ago. It's been a few months. And then we had an accident just in January on the 9th over on that section too. So we do have some data from that area, but outside of that, I couldn't give you an answer.
But going back, Chris, what you're saying is where we're missing, where we believe good data is from 6000 west to 6800, where we see some gap in our data.
Yeah. I like you said, Mayor. I think I see 3 different sections of roadway that all need to be kind of evaluated separately. I don't think you can make the same assumptions for that we'll see the same exact data that we saw in what we did test on the other 2 segments of Canal Boulevard, because I think the use on those other areas are different.
Mayor, I'd like to make a couple comments. So the council has heard me talk about this before. Chris, not so much because you're new. And I just want to give some anecdotal evidence. I live along Canal Boulevard. Our HOA park's right there. I had, things to do with the creation of that road and the delay of the road and all kinds of things. But in the 2017 road study that UDOT did that justified opening up Canal Boulevard between Alpine Highway and North County, they estimated by 2050 there would be 6,000 to 8,000 vehicles in that section alone per day. We're up to several thousand now. It's heavily used. And I worked with Andy. We just resurfaced that section. We restriped it, which I think has been helpful because, first of all, I wanted to see the bike lanes widened and kept there because you've got 689 residencies that are almost completed up in Ridgeview. A lot of those people are going to use that. So I think we've done some good things. So my experience, I drive that every day because I go to North County and go down to my office. And I drove it 2 hours ago. And my experience has been the following. Basically, if you try to drive the speed limit through there, especially if you're coming down the hill going west, people are right up on your tail, and as soon as they get at the bottom of the hill, they try to pass you in the center no turn lane. And so we've tried to emphasize that because it's really dangerous because the road then goes to 2 lanes. I think somebody's going to get killed there. So one of the things you did today, which I thought was amazing, is we actually had a flashing light say, slow down. So it was interesting as I came down, I hit it because I've gotten the habit of driving a little bit faster because I'm tired of people passing me in the center lane, you know. But I saw that and I slowed down. I actually went down to about 27 miles per hour. But everybody behind me slowed down and they got off of my tail. And I thought, there's a quick solution that we could have been doing for some time there. And it just said, it's a flashing that you're going, slow down. And people did. And so sometimes people just need to be reminded, I think. So that's a good solution there. Plus we restriped it. And I applaud the city for working on that. And I really appreciate it because it's been a concern to me because it was just what 3 weeks ago that there was a car that rolled over by the gate to the sewer lift station. And, you know, I was there shortly after and people were climbing out of the car and they were on the side. But they were going too fast and they hit the curve in the road. So there's a lot of concerns. We had the bad accident last August where we had that student that was driving who knows how fast, ran through the stoplight at Alpine Highway, hit the tree and the vehicle caught on flame. And it's a miracle that he was saved. So I appreciate it and I appreciate the studies. I understand the concerns over Madison Avenue because that has been a residential street for years. And so we've got to do calming things there because their driveways come out on the street. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I appreciate the sign. I hope you leave it there because it made a big difference today, and that's all anecdotal, but I just saw people slow down. And I thought, I'm getting away with driving 28 here. If I was driving 28 before, there'd been several people pass me through the center of the road. So it's a good idea. Thank you.
So Councilman, before we kind of have a lot more conversation, we have several residents that are here.
Right.
I would like to think they come up and talk with council about what they're seeing and maybe some possible solutions. So if you're okay, why don't we set, we'd like to have you come up. If you'll please state your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and keep it concise. And if you have good suggestions, we'd be open to hearing some suggestions, what you might have. So at this time, we'd like to invite the public to come up and give us some feedback on this.
Hello, my name is Pam Redmond, and I'd like to thank the engineer for the information he gave about how things are getting more intense on that road. I wanted to address some of the issues that were actually in our Highland Insider, and the engineer already addressed something about this time, the suggestions in the traffic calming toolbox are not adequate anymore. They suggested things like medians and stuff, and I wanted to thank Doug Courtney. He went out and actually, I'm the one that was texting you, he actually went out and looked at it, and he observed that the chicanes don't actually, these kind of things, the chicanes, the medians don't slow things down. The only thing that slowed the people down was the physical curve in the road. Is that right? And he said it had to be, and that's what I agree, it has to be a physical barrier. So I wanted to thank Brittany Bills for pushing it back against this toolbox at the time when he made his report because there were weaknesses in it. And I don't think that they're adequate for solving these problems today. We need something more aggressive. Also, the speed tables on Canal Boulevard, when they were up, they were working, and I was thrilled. And when they took them down, I think that's when I started writing Doug about it. I said, if you've taken them down, we'd love to have them. Let's bring them down to the west side. We want them back. And he said, oh, we had to take them down for winter. And I go, oh, that's really sad. But the information you were getting from those surveys was that I think they were skewed. I got reports from my friend that lives in Cedar Hills that the Church of the Relief Society was calling him and saying, we have got to flood Highland City Council. She was organizing this this effort to flood your survey with people they want to speed through that area. And they were saying, tell them that we don't like it, tell them that we don't like it, and do it over and over and over again. And they did. So you've got to take that data you got with a grain of salt. I think that it was skewed because people want to go through there. We got some information from the GRAMA, the Freedom of Information Act, on how many times, You know, when it first went through, people were being patrolled by the police, and we ourselves were pulled over by our finest, saying, you know, you're going a bit fast. This is 33. And I go, oh, thank you. We will, and we did. We obeyed, but down on our end, the west section, I think there's only been 2 citations in 25 months, and they haven't been. And that was 2 days apart. So, you know, we need some enforcement. Thank you.
Yes, we are related, but we're like a third cousin. So go ahead, go Don.
Yeah, Don Osler, so we're distantly related, but yeah. So I live on Ashby Lane, which is my field to behind my house, fronts Canal Boulevard. And I got to tell you that I have seen many accidents. I've seen 8 myself, or know of 8 myself, and some of them don't go to the police. One night with my wife and I were in the patio, and a teenager come up and wiped out 4 of the Roberts trees, and then quickly her father came over and towed the car away before the police showed up. So I'm not sure how many of the accidents are reported. And Jared Young told me before he moved that he had 3 people that had gone over the curve into his property and drove off, that he was left to deal with. So, but there's been many of those kind of accidents. And the problem seems to be, like you said, at night. I've noticed at night, it speeds up at night. And then the problem is the road looks like a nice wide road, but there's a curve in it that throws people off. And I think that's what makes them end up over onto the Roberts and the Youngs and those areas off the road. But one of the things that concerns me is the sidewalk starts on the south side of the road at the Alpine Highway, and then halfway through it stops, and it starts on the north side to 6,000 West. So you have to cross the road right there. And that really, to me, seems like a very dangerous thing, because you have pedestrians that are crossing the road where people are speeding down that road. So I would suggest that you put the sidewalk on both sides of the road so they don't have to cross the road if there's money for that. And patrolling is another issue, because I don't see a lot of patrolling on that road. And I think if they patrolled at night, I think there would be a lot of tickets that you could write at night, personally, especially on weekends when the teenagers are out driving around. That seems like the worst is on the weekend nights, is where it really is. And that's really my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
John Redmond, it's good to see you. We haven't visited for a little bit. 33 months ago, canal went through. 25 months ago, we made our first presentation of some of our concerns. 8 months ago, we filed a formal mitigation plan. And then last week, I updated that. I provided all the data to everybody so you'd have the historical data behind that. I agree that the east, center, and the west section are different roads. And the west section is really 3. There's a whole slew of residences on the east end, and a smaller group on the west end. And then we have created a giant Indy 500 passway in the middle, okay? And that is a problem, okay? Basically, our feeling is it's too fast, it's too unsafe, and it's too noisy. I graduated from the Air Force Academy a long time ago and was a pilot for 10 years, instructor for 7. And this last week, I was watching the events happen in Reagan National Airport with some sadness. People have known, civilian airliner pilots knew, military pilots knew, the FAA knew, air traffic controller knew. The night before the accident, a commercial airliner had to go around from final because of a helicopter. The next night, the timing was right, 67 people had to pay for it. 2 days later, the FAA finally prevented helicopters from flying through the airport space. Now, I hope we're not looking at the same kind of thing at Canal, but I don't see why we have to be at 30 miles an hour and not enforce things more tightly when both roads, east and west, and American Fork are posted at 25 miles an hour. And if you time it, it's about 1 mile on the east, 0.7 miles in the middle, 1.6 miles on the west. The difference between 30 miles an hour and 35, assuming at 25 people drive 30, at 30 we know they drive 36, 37. The difference in time is 30 seconds. So what we're talking about is trying to allow people to drive at 35 when it's saving them 30 seconds, and we're putting people at risk. So our recommendation is that we would like to see 2 permanent, either drainage depressions, 2 speed tables, or 2 4-way stop signs. That's 6380 and 6630 West. We'd like to see automated camera enforcements in the residential areas, and that is legal in Utah. If a road is posted at 30 or below, you can do that. And we'd like to see the speed limit changed to 25.
Hello, my name is Kyle Pettit, and I live on the corner of 6630 and Madison. Some of you have been to my house, so just want to say thank you to John and everyone before us. I concur with their statements. I really hope that we can get something done and improve the conditions along there. I've seen personally 3 accidents. I saw up here 5 in my area. Right at my corner, I've seen personally 3 of them. It's hopefully we can take care of things before something really happens. I saw on the stats that there were 55 on Canal. I looked up on a Utah website, and it reported in Highland 209 accidents in 2023. Extrapolating a little bit because of the dates of when the accidents on Canal happened, but if you were to say that 55 of those were in that same year, you're talking close to 20 to 25% of the accidents are all on Canal. Again, that would need to be verified, but my hope would be is like John said, is to have some permanent things done there, speed tables or depressions or a 4-way stop sign. There's a lot of kids who play on the road. Probably going to hear from some of the other neighbors along my neighbors here, and they might say the same thing. Just out of curiosity, if permissible, can we raise hands to see how many are here for this event? Is that possible? How many are here for Canal Boulevard? So pretty much the majority. Anyway, I'll stop there and just hope that we can get to some resolution that's permanent. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Hodson, and we live just west of 6000 West in that residential neighborhood there. And we've been here now almost 17 years. And according to the city website, and that's as of right now, our lot is zoned as an R140 residential. And in the description of it, it says, reading partially on the way down on bullet point number 1, it's characterized by large lots, well-spaced buildings, well-kept lawns, trees, and other landscaping with the nature of the environment substantially undisturbed, a minimum of vehicular traffic, and quiet residential conditions favorably for family life. And the majority of homes along Canal Boulevard are zoned as R140. So you can understand our frustration with the road connecting, and now it's considered a major collector. So we have even more increased traffic. And some of the frustrations that we experienced that have been not mentioned, but that overnight our speed limit went from 25 to 30, which meant that we knew people going 5 to 10 miles and over were now, it was just going to increase to now 40 miles an hour in front of our home. So cars are now driving faster. We do appreciate the speed signs that list your speed. But one thing we've noticed is that one of the signs is near our neighbor's home, and people will speed up traveling eastbound, and that is right in front of our home. Also, another frustration is that we are impacted by this every single day, and yet it seems that those who don't want to drive slower are getting the voice, the greater voice. And so, and even my husband and I, just this last week, we were coming home at night, and as we crossed over 6000 West into our neighborhood, the street does curve a little bit, and there was a car along the midsection of Canal that was tailgating my husband. He was going 30 miles an hour, and as soon as we crossed over, right where the road curves in this residential neighborhood, the car passed us, and he was going the speed limit. And my suggestions would be those that have been suggested already: stop signs, the drainage dips, and also more police presence. Thank you for your time.
I'm Liz Rice. I appreciate, first of all, Chris, you putting 9600 North on that. I know that there's 2 residents in the process of trying to file something for that. So somebody needs to maybe help me a little bit. I'm curious as to where these speed bumps are now. They're gone, right? They're in storage, I'm assuming?
Yeah, they're in storage.
Okay. So I struggle with spending $100,000, and when I was here, when you guys approved that as $100,000, it is, Kim, it was $100,000 plus installation. And I'm struggling. I mean, nobody really likes a speed bump, but it slowed Canal Boulevard down. And I think we need that back. I really do. I appreciate law enforcement being on 9600 North. They've been there a couple of times, setting up a couple of speed traps and slowing that down. But if you're not going to put them on Canal, let's put them on 9600 or a circle or something, because 9600 North, and it's really not residents that's using 9600 North. As I sit there and watch, it is mostly trucks, pickup trucks, going down to what I call the Reinhardt property to do construction, which is kind of the next 3 blocks over from me. But I'm supportive of any calming measures on Canal Boulevard and 9600 North. And if I need to file one on 9600, I don't live on 9600 and I don't live on Canal Boulevard, I'd be glad to file that for, $25 or whatever. But 9600 North is, you can ask law enforcement. They're going pretty fast. Thanks for your time.
My name is Noah Van Cott. I live on Madison Avenue. I just wanted to say, first off, thanks to each one of you. I know there's a lot of things that you guys do in life. Appreciate the time that you all give to serve. I'm sure you don't get thanks a lot, but thank you. We appreciate it. Special thanks from me to you, Chief Patton. We had a fire at our garage. Maybe you remember back in June. I think we've got a house to sleep in, kind of thanks to your men and women. So big thanks for everything you did for our family. I think what I would ask, and I'll try to keep my comments brief, is just as I listened to this council talk about the deer, and you guys shared your lived experiences, like I'd ask you to kind of think about the lived experiences that we're sharing with each one of you. And you, Councilman Smith, I think had some lived experiences as it relates to the road. My wife and I live on Madison Avenue. We've got 3 kids: Avery, who's 12, Liam, who's 9, Grayson, who's 6, and when I send them outside the front door, every single time I think, are they going to be okay? Are they safe? Can they play in the front yard? Our mailbox is right across the street, and I don't feel safe having my kids go and get the mail. So that's a tough thing for me. As I think about that, and I think about trying to watch them and trying to make sure that they're safe, to me it's easy to think, okay, well, they're not in the street, they're in the front yard. As we heard them mention, there's a concrete fence with steel barriers and rods basically 100 yards away, where a car drove all the way through those, back out of those, knocked down 3 or 4 of the different fence sections. So for me, I just ask, that as you think about the asks that we have as a group, just think about how you would feel if when you drove home from a long day's work and you drive into your driveway, it's a driveway that faces Madison or faces Canal. And as you think about either your homes or your kids' homes with your grandchildren, just think about how you'd feel about your grandchildren out in the front yard playing and that you'd want them to be safe. So my ask would be a reduced speed limit down to 25, I think others have asked for and talked about, and then some thought of a location for where there's four-way stop signs, speed tables to try to keep the traffic slower. I think as a point of people made on the survey, like when you ask people if they want something they don't want, no one's gonna want it. But for those of us that actually live on the road, it's meaningful, and it's our lived experience every day, just like a gardener who's trying to deal with fruit trees and manage with deer. So again, thanks to all of you for the service, and thanks to you, Chief. Thank you.
I'm Amy Colby. I too live on Madison Avenue, and I will be super brief. I have witnessed all the accidents that people have talked about, but I am one that walks my dog every single morning between 7:15 and 7:30, and that crosswalk is not lit at all. And you have people coming from 6800 West zooming down. I have been in the middle of the crosswalk afraid for myself, and I'm a big person, right? So I think of the Van Cott kids. We definitely need something at that intersection. It's blinking lights on the opposite ends, nothing coming on Canal. So I definitely think we need to address that. Four-way stop. I'm for any slowing measures, as everybody here is. I too think I appreciate asking where those speed bumps went. You know, we got the survey to say, do we like these? Do we not? All of those things. So it's sad to me that we spent the money as a city and now they're sitting in storage when they could be used as a slowing measure. So we are in favor, as the Colbys, for any slowing measures. Identify, again, I am passionate about this specific intersection, but we definitely need a four-way stop, as we have seen lots of accidents there on that one. Thank you.
Just a clarification. I know a couple people are wondering where the speed bumps are and why we're not using them. These are temporary speed bumps, and unfortunately, they cannot be used in the wintertime. So we had to take them down.
Turns out that we've had little enough snow this winter that we probably could have used them, but
Can guarantee.
that's right. That's the problem.
So, anyway, are there others that would like to come forward?
Liz Rice, one more thing. So in front of Legacy Elementary and American Fork, they have 3 speed bumps. So how do they accommodate their snow removal? And we can't.
Yeah,
I'm just
because
after
of the
question.
temporary.
They're permanent.
These
the
are
permanent.
so
if
when
it were
you-
permanent,
So the snowplows take it away when they
It's
go.
temporary.
they would catch the temporary one. They'll lip on it.
Hey, I'm Dan Campbell. I live near Kyle Pettit at the intersection of 6630 and Madison Avenue. Thanks to the engineer for the presentation. I'm grateful that you're really forthright about all the accidents that have been occurring. I was going to bring up 9 of them that I've seen or seen evidence of. This is the 3rd time I've addressed the council in person over this issue. This is the 4th time, if you count COVID, when we were kind of just summarily dismissed because we were online. But the first time, we all came out and opposed the road and told you how dangerous it was going to be. Last time, a couple of years ago, I told you how dangerous it was going to be. I think we've all been vindicated. This is kind of a big I told you so meeting. It's a dangerous road. And it's not just the speed. Now, the engineer's presentation was great because it demonstrated how the speed's out of control and it needs to be calmed. But doing these engineering studies is like having a blind man take tickets at the movie theater, all right? Amy could come up here and again, tell you what it's like walking the road, running the road. I can tell you what it's like. All of these people can tell you what it's like. It's kind of insulting. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. You put in stop signs that blink right next to my house constantly, but nothing to tell the people coming along Madison that it's a blind intersection there at Madison and 6630. It's blind. You can't see It's hard to see the cars, especially on the south side where I live, and it's hard to see out. Okay, it's a bad intersection, it's bad road design, and we all know it, and we are primary source witnesses. All right? It's insulting that you won't listen to us. And I'm glad that you're doing the studies, but they're just telling you about the speed. You're not seeing all the people on their phones. You're not seeing them going off on the side of the road over the lines. We had one of these citizens here, a couple of them had done a speed study of their own where they bought radar equipment. We all know it's a dangerous road. Anyway, Kim, you said you liked solutions, but I don't think I've been heard. Last time I gave you this paper, I'm not going to give it to you again. It's 2 years ago. Lower the speed to 25 miles an hour. That's a given. People go 5 over. It's the first obvious step. 2 more radar speed indicator signs. The one that says slow down, that's great. We need those on Madison, all right? On the intersection that I'm talking about, you haven't yet painted the crosswalks. I asked for that 2 years ago. I think other people supported it. We need the crosswalks painted. We need people coming from the 2 directions, east-west, to know it's a blind intersection. You could put cross traffic does not stop instead of a big blinking stop sign at my intersection. And you need to paint the choke point down in the hollow. One thing I want to say, though, is don't put in the cameras where you automatically issue citations. That's digital tyranny, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for your help.
Katrina Van Cott, my husband, already spoke, but we do have little children, and something happened last May that made us very, very nervous, and that's why I would love for this to be addressed. I was coming home on Canal Boulevard and towards Madison on my road to go into my home, and a car of teenage drivers came up behind me and then flew around me on the side. This is a windy road, and they went flying by. As I approached my house, my neighbors were outside. I asked if they'd seen the car because I lost sight of the car within seconds. So, and I was going the speed limit. So we were out talking. My children were riding bikes along the side of the road by me, and the same vehicle came back down and flew by again. And we caught it on video and things like that, but like, it is a big concern of ours with our children to have that big of a segment of road for people to be able to drive on from all over North Utah County past our homes and going the speeds that they are going. And so I reiterate what they've said, to slow down and to put in stop signs and other measurements to help so that our children can be safe. Thank you.
I'm Jason Hedrick. I live across the street from the Van Cotts. I will tell you that their garage burning down was one of the greatest blessings in our neighborhood. People slowed down to like 20 to watch that thing for like 3 months afterwards. And I'm sad it burned down, don't get me wrong, but it's just amazing how it changed. Van Cotts have a few kids. Next to them, there's about another 3 or 4 kids. And next to them, there's about another 3 or 4 kids. 35, I'm going to say, guys, is way too fast in that neighborhood. I know the speed limit is 30, but you know people aren't going 30. It's way too fast. Way too fast. I've almost seen one of Katrina's and Noah's kids get hit. There have been neighbors also that you guys probably don't even know about that have interacted with drivers that are reckless and dangerous. And I agree with Dan Campbell. I mean, Kim, you said it best. We know what the problem is. What's taking so long to take action? I honestly don't care what you do. I think we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, filter all the deer so that you can't even go 15 miles an hour, and it solves all the problems. I really don't care what the solution is. I will tell you this, though. I hope the day never comes that one of us have to stand up here and say, we told you so, because some little kid or somebody else got hit because of a crazy going around. And they do. I've been there for 12 years. You can hear speed. Like, I'm working in there, you can hear it. Like, I can tell you almost within a few miles an hour, 50, 60. I saw that chart, and part of me was like, man, it doesn't look accurate. Maybe it is, but it sure doesn't feel that way on Madison. with those curvy roads, with cars on the roads, with the trees, between teenagers and other people. It's not just teenagers, let me tell you that. There's a lot of people. It is super dangerous. I don't know what else to say except for pleading for you guys to take action so that somebody doesn't get hurt or that somebody doesn't hurt somebody for putting themselves in a situation to hurt others. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abby Loosely, and I live off the west portion of Canal Boulevard by Madison and Mountain View Drive. And I can recognize now several cars that start at 6800 and drive east on Canal Boulevard. I know which cars they are, and they come at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know what color they are, I know who drives them, and they drive way too fast. Almost every time I'm driving on Canal Boulevard, turning onto Mountain View Drive, I'm almost rear-ended because I'm slowing down to make a very sharp turn, and the cars behind me don't care. They take the very narrow 2-lane road and try and drive off onto the side. It's a crazy, dangerous turn, and anytime after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I try and avoid that turn at all costs with my kids in the car. Visibility when driving west of that dip is near zero. You can't see people coming, and they're coming way too fast down the dip. So it makes that turn also dangerous. So the speeds really do need to be lowered, especially where the road is more narrow. It just doesn't make sense. There's no need for the cars to be going 35 on such a small, narrow part of the road. So stop signs put in to stop people, that people coming know that there will be a stop. People will be turning. A 3-way stop there would be very effective, in my opinion. And in other areas of Utah, I've seen the speed signs that have like red and white lights that like make them think a cop is there. That's, I think, would be very effective. I also think a stop sign added onto a 4-way stop on 6000 would help a lot, because often if you're coming on that road trying to turn onto Canal Boulevard, you'll be slowing, waiting for oncoming traffic, and then someone will go around you, and just it's not safe, in my opinion, there as well. So that's what I think.
Hi, my name is Melissa Bond. I live on Madison Avenue, just on the cul-de-sac there. And we've been here for 15 years. We bought a house in Highland because we knew it was safe, it was quiet, it was a good place. We've lived in many different states, and so we know what it's like to be in different areas. And we chose this area out of all the places from Bountiful down to Springville. We chose this area because of the location. We didn't realize it was going to become a thoroughfare on my side yard. And I have a lot of kids, and I've had to often tell my kids, you can't go biking on the streets, you can't do anything because it's so dangerous. And I'm not joking. People do go, it's 30 miles an hour, but people often go, 5 miles an hour over or more. I'm gonna let you know, it's not just 5 miles an hour over. It's between 40 to 60 miles an hour, and I'm not joking. In fact, one of my sons was talking to a friend, and that friend he bragged that he went 60 miles an hour quite often on that road from Madison Avenue west toward the high school. So it's not just a little bit, it's often. I go walking on that road often, and I flag people down, I wave. I feel like a mean neighbor to flag people down, but they are going over 40 quite often. And it's a dangerous area and it's a pretty road. It's a nice curvy road, but it's dangerous because it curves. It is a blind intersection at the 6630 in Madison going into Canal, where the new subdivision is, and going down. And people quite often, you'll see people quite often take their cars and cruise, or their motorcycles and cruise back and forth 3 or 4 times, up and down, and see how fast they can go, because nothing stops them. There's no stop signs, there's no speed tables, there's nothing to slow them down. And so they think that's a fun place because there's no other place in the area that they can do that except on our road. They just go as fast as they can. I've actually also seen kids coming home from school, because we live near Freedom, walking down across, trying to cross Madison Avenue. And I was outside doing some weeding last spring, and I saw kids running for their lives as cars were coming because the cars can't see them, and the kids started to scream. I don't know which kids they were. They were in a different neighborhood, but I felt so bad for those kids. We need to put a stop sign at that intersection, and we need to slow it down. Because if people are going 40 to 50 miles an hour and they see children walking across the street, they're not gonna be able to stop in time. We need to slow it down. Thank you.
Sherry Kramer again. I was hoping not to have to come up. My neighbor was supposed to be here, but she is not able to make it and asked if I could read this for her. And also, this isn't the amount of people here for that center section between 6,000 and Alpine Highway. This is not indicative of how many people are concerned about this. I think we've only had a few here, but many couldn't make it. They've had young women's and all kinds of other things going on. So just know that there is a lot of support in that section as well. My neighbor said, Mayor and Council, the issue of speed mitigation along Canal Boulevard remains an issue. The temporary speed tables were a huge success and changed the whole feel of Canal for the better, but you seem to fail to recognize that. It was disappointing when they were removed in the fall that the council did not stick to their agreement that they would have something ready to replace them. It is further disappointing that the city took a survey that was incomplete and insufficient. You took the survey when tables were first put in place, but not after they had been there for 6 months. You did not adequately relay to citizens that the tables were slower for the road than permanent ones would be, and you also did nothing to relay to citizens the major issues and concerns about Canal Boulevard. Many who do not live along Canal, upon understanding the issues, have agreed a speed table was better than an accident. It is beyond frustrating and almost comical that you managed to take the opinions of those who are not at all affected in higher regard than the safety of those who have been and are affected. Your information about the difference in speeds on the road has also been misleading. Your previous engineer stated it would make a big difference, and your newsletter saying the speed tables made a dramatic difference. With that said, the citizens of Canal are not against the testing of other physical speed mitigation devices as long as they work and keep accidents from happening and out of our yards, damaging our property, and potentially killing someone. It is of great importance that the ball does not continue to be dropped and plans for further physical mitigation are put in place. Speed patrol, of course, always helps, but it goes beyond that on Canal. It needs to be an actual physical mitigation device and strategy. We ask that the city and council stop delaying this issue and that continued mitigating be put into place immediately. Barb Lamb. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Reagan Homer. I am Van Cott's neighbor, and my kids play with his kids. My oldest is 6 years old. His name's Jaden. I have a daughter that's 4. Her name's Brooklyn. And then I have another daughter. She's 2 years old. And then I have a 4-month boy named Brody. And as he mentioned, you know, our mailbox is across the street. Our kids are always out playing. And I feel like it's giving my 2-year-old daughter, obviously I try to teach them that roads are dangerous, right? But it's gonna be my 2-year-old daughter that runs into the street to catch a ball. And, you know, she's gonna be that statistic that, you know, I told you so that everyone's been talking about. So I wish you guys would just listen and at least make some action. I think a minimum would be, you know, 25 miles an hour, as been mentioned. And then also enter a 4-way stop right there as well in Madison. Thanks.
My name's Jim Colby. I'm on Madison Avenue as well. Been there 17 years. Been here long enough that when that road was planned and we had the meetings and saying everybody was opposed to it, of course, you don't want that road going down your house. I never got up. I never said anything because it was inevitable. Once I did the research, I figured, hey, that was in the plan. The city could decide they're going to do it once a certain traffic or population was there. So I didn't fight it because it was there. I think it's inevitable that you guys need to do something on this road now that it's in. Why fight it? I think there needs to be a four-way stop. I think the road needs to be at 25 miles an hour. I don't drive slow. Don't listen. I hate 20-mile-an-hour residential. And I was so surprised, because I'm always watching speed limit, that road was 35. I'm going, are you kidding me? I can drive my usual fast speed on this road? It surprised me. So do the inevitable like we had to, and accepting the road, fix the road. Thank you.
Ed Kilgore, I live at 9866 on Canal. We've been there, bought the home in '03. At the time, everybody was told the road would never go all the way through, despite what is on the plans, because it was a green belt down there and they'd never get permission. But things change. I just wanted to mention that the plan that was mentioned at the beginning was 2 years ago that was brought up, and it was pointed out that since 1974 that had been the plan. And I have a brother-in-law who's worked in city planning for 40 years and says plans change all the time. And Lehigh changed that plan because that road was supposed to go through Lehigh down to the freeway originally. So there's no reason to not make this road entirely residential. Where my house is where the farmland is on the south side. And the road is about 10 feet narrower there and will be until that land is developed. So that makes that piece of road even more dangerous. Now, I'm an old graybeard, and the main reason I got up here, I want Dr. Smith to look at this wart on my nose when we're done here.
I can almost see it.
You can see it? Well, that's really bad. But I am an old graybeard, but I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren that come to play in my yard. I want to know that they're protected. And I think you have the same feelings I do when it comes to family, friends, and neighbors. You want the best for them. We understand you have restrictions, but please take in consideration making that road a nice little road for a neighborhood to have safety for their children on their bicycles, their tricycles, or all the other things that kids now ride. I appreciate everything you do. I do see the police out more now than they were, say, 2-3 years ago. And I just wanted to make sure that nobody's going to try to keep the road big enough to drive all the way through Lehigh to the freeway. Thanks for your time.
My name is Sig Widmer, and I live on Canal and 6180. And that road is NASCAR all the time. And I don't know if it's been brought up, but the stop sign, my daughter was a traffic fatality accident in just Thanksgiving of '23. And the fire department was there and the cops were there. And luckily, then there was no flashing stop sign as there is now. But she's not a speeder at all. I've driven her and it drives me nuts because she drives so slow. But she was T-boned coming up on that road going westbound right on that 6630, I think it is, where the flashing stop sign is. So I'm in favor of a couple things: to drop the speed limit down and also put a four-way stop right on Canal Boulevard and 6180. I mean, I have a stop sign going into Canal, but the east-west, there's no stop sign there. I know initially it was supposed to be a quicker road to go from east side to the west side, but that's all under the bridge now. So that's my proposal, is to not only put a stop sign, four-way stop up where that 6630 is, but also on 6180, the Canal Boulevard there. Thank you.
Is there anyone else like to come and address the council on this item? Okay, seeing none. Now, this was not a public, when you say public hearing, we will go ahead and just bring it back to council. I know that I've asked Chris also to come up with some other, if there's some other suggestions what to do. As we talked, we've gotten some good feedback from residents. Now, unfortunately, as we've heard this feedback before, I mean, I'm just being very straightforward on that. This has been a road that we were all concerned about for many years as it came across. So as we've looked, we have 3 sections of road. And so as I think we addressed, there might be 3 different ways to handle. We have from North County to Alpine Highway, which Scott's talked about, that we've added some other things. We've done some striping. We then went from Alpine Highway to 6,000. That's where we put the 2 temporary speed tables in. We put some speed feedback signs there. We've had residents in here that I remember when the Roberts kept saying, "Hey, someone's going to hit my front yard." I remember running there when they did. And so we have the concern. We're also hearing about an issue from 6,000 west down to 6,800. I went down to right there by where Kyle Pettit's at the intersection. As I stood there, I recognized that we had a house on the corner there. I think that 6630 has renters or someone that was parking right on Canal Boulevard. So I couldn't see very well here. And I saw landscape that was blocking as it turned around the corner there. So I'm going, okay, we've got some issues where there's a blind spot on that Madison. And as it comes up, so I mean, as I look at it, your Madison, or if you want to keep 6,800 to 6,000, has some different concerns that we need to address. But then we have addressed from 6,000 up. That road, in my opinion, from 6,000 to Alpine Highway is wider and it entices individuals to speed. And that, and that's what we've noticed is that's why I think we've talked about 3 different sections. So Chris, as we talk, is the council right now, this road is 30 miles an hour. 10-400 is 35, 9600 is 25. And I believe it's, in your map, Chris, you're showing all the way across Canal is 30 miles an hour, correct? And that was, Scott, and we were on the council, we thought that was maybe a way to mitigate to get down.
Well, there was a compromise because originally between Alpine Highway and 6,000, it was 35.
Yeah.
So we lowered it there, increased the other just to make it all consistent.
Now, we've heard from our engineer, we don't have the best data at this time from 6,800 west to 6,000. We have not studied real well there, as we can see the curvatures and some of the concerns from those mentioned in Madison. There is a blind spot there in Madison as you come up to 6630. Is the blind spot for me, is it brought about because some landscaping and some front yards? Is it brought about from other things? I think we need the questions always come up, why do we not address 6630 and put another stop sign there? Now, we've heard in the past, and I'm just going, we said this is a collector road, we add that, it's the individuals won't think they're supposed to stop and we might create another safety issue. That's why I've heard in the past. So we need to address why 6630, it is a little bit of a blind. Why are we not adding another stop thing there, or what can we do in that area? Because this is the only area, by the way, of Canal Boulevard that has, if you want to say car where they can back onto the road. All the rest has all the driveways off of Canal Boulevard. It's only the Madison area that has that, but we also have the curvature in Madison right there. And I don't know how we can, if you want to talk about each section, how we can mitigate on each section, what would you like to do?
I think we need to focus on 6,000 to 6,800, the Madison Avenue section, but also not do it in isolation of 9,600 and 10,400. We could mitigate this so much that we drive everybody to 9,400 where we have 25 driveways going into the road instead of 5. So we've got to be careful that we look at this as a whole, and we do have to depend on traffic engineers to tell us where is the traffic going to be. And if this is designated a collector, and it's been designated a collector since 1974, it's unfortunate that realtors may not say that to the potential home buyers. They may tell them something actually literally not true. But if it's been a collector, it is a collector. Having said that, the difference of having a collector go all the way across east-west to 6,000 and then go north or south, and then going another 8 blocks to 68, I don't know that necessarily has to be locked in cement. I'm amenable to making that more a residential area and maybe reducing it to 25. But having said that, I don't I can't make that decision without others that really know traffic patterns and really know where's the traffic going to go. If it doesn't go down Canal, where's it going to go? Is it going to go into other neighborhoods that's less safe than Canal? Most of Canal has been designed for safety. There's no road, there's no driveways going into it for most of Canal. But that Madison is the gray area, and it's the area that I'm at least willing to consider redesignating it if we have to. But I want that to be studied, and I want the data. If we did that, where would those people go?
So let me ask you, Chris, what data would we get back to say to lower it down to 25? I mean, what is the trigger? Like, when we all recognize this has been defined as a collector road. The road, you brought up, I always thought when they were doing this, it was either going to go down 10-400, they're going to come down here Canal, and it was supposed to go all the way down the freeway if you go back in the early 90s. That was kind of the talk. Well, it doesn't. It stops at 6800 West. So the question is, do we have the wrong classification on that section of road as a collector? And what would a traffic engineer come and tell us and how to determine that? Is that, I mean, how do we determine to put a stop sign there at 6630? And how do we determine this should stay as a collector or not?
So the traffic calming handbook suggests that four-way or stop signs in general aren't used for speed control, but that they are used if it is warranted. So we could do a study and just basically a traffic count to see if a four-way stop is warranted. And if it is, then that would be the solution at that location.
I mean, my other concern is you put a four-way stop, then the cars don't stop the other way, and you just move your accident from one spot. And I understand, and unfortunately, we did put flashing stop sign there at 6630. And unfortunately, some have not stopped, and probably that's where some accidents happen. However, there. Okay. The one concern is that we have here. By the way, this is the council, so please don't also out turn. If we come up in here, the one concern we have is that it does appear to be blind there at 66. If you're on the south side of the road, it's more blind that you can't see as they come around the corner. But my situation is I believe it's the landscape in that front yard that if I was at that stop sign that I couldn't see because the landscape's a little larger and it goes down the down the sidewalk. So some of that, and then just that's what I've observed at that area. However, we need to address that. We need to address if Madison and if this area is still a collector road. Because we keep using the word collector road. If this is not functioning as a collector, and I understand there might be cars going through it, but one of the things when I hear all the residents here, I have a resident here from 6400 West, and I'm going, okay, I could be hearing from residents. When I very first got on the council, Kim, do you remember it was 10400 in your intersection? We were worried a kid was going to get hit, and a kid got hit there.
Yeah, a kid got hit, 2 kids.
And I remember running over there and going, okay, that was 10-4. And I'm not trying to excuse that we should say, we have accidents elsewhere, so we shouldn't address here. But also, I have accidents at 6400 West and 10400, and we should say that the road doesn't cross there. And yet, if you look at the traffic counts, they're probably much higher there. And I've had residents say we need stop signs there. I'm just saying, as we start implementing this, we need to be aware we are going to have other areas we need to address. But we have a concern here. We are seeing some issues. There are blind sites. The one difference that I see, difference between 10400 and Canal, is there's some curvature in the road. And the way that it does come down off that hill, down into that new subdivision, also is a little bit blind. So we've added some blind spots, but yet we keep saying this is a collector road.
Well, but you can have a collector road that's moving traffic, but you don't have to go 30, 35 miles an hour. So there are 2 designated collector roads in American Fork that I know of, 700 North. That's 25 miles an hour. It goes all the way over to the Canyon Road in Pleasant Grove. It's 25 as far as I know. The one that comes off Main Street, and I think it's First South, goes into 1100 North in Pleasant Grove. A lot of that is 25. I mean, there's no reason why we have to say a collector road is 35, like 10400, which is a problem, and we've got to address that. Or that you have 30 miles an hour from 6000 West going to 6800. It could be 25 miles an hour, still be a collector road.
So, Chief, I got a question. If we decided tonight to bring this down to 25, we already have 25 on 9600 North. Is that, and I'm just going with what we always heard. You said, hey, people are going to drive what they think that road's supposed to be. But we're talking from 6000 West to 6800. It does seem different than some of the others as a collector. So if we decided tonight to go to 25, what would be your assumption? If I had to ask you, I'm asking your opinion, what happens? Do you see any change in traffic? What do we do?
I think we'll see some change. I don't think it's going to be, that's not going to be the only way that we're going to resolve this issue. We will see some change for those that notice the stops, or notice the change and then lower their speed. We're still going to see individuals that will drive how they feel comfortable on that road.
Yeah. I drove Canal Boulevard all the way to 6800 through Madison at 30, and I had 50 cars pass me. That's an estimate. Maybe it was 30, but it was a lot of cars. Nobody was behind me. They were all passing me because I went 30, which was the speed limit. And I decide, okay, I'm going to go down to American Fork and come back on 1120. 1120 is every bit as wide as our collector. It is a collector, and it was 25 miles an hour. So here I'm thinking, wow, it's 30 too slow, and then I go down to American Fork, and I've got to even go slower and hit that 25 mile an hour speed limit. I would really like us to talk to American Fork, who I believe have taken a strategy. Sherry probably could tell us about this, but that they are lowering their speed limits, and find out what has this done. Maybe the chief could talk to American Fork chief and say, this 25 on a collector, because it's clear that 1120 is a collector, and yet it's 25 miles an hour. It'd be nice to get that data back. I'd like to see that.
So what you're suggesting is, why don't we talk, because American Fork does have 2 roads at 25, and I remember when Canal was going in, we kept joking, we didn't want to make this the Costco road. You know, that if it's faster for them to go, they'll do this route. We always, and when I did it, I drove in 700 North was the faster route because it's more, you go down, it was more direct. Yeah. And maybe we are getting more traffic heading down to the Costco area because this is higher. So, Chief, would you be amenable talking to their chief there at American Fork and asking how they're 25 miles an hour and if it's been an issue?
No, I'd be happy. We're talking about 1120, is that correct?
1120, yeah.
No, I'd be happy to.
1120
it's
and,
very
700 North. You need to ask
700 North, yeah, that's a
right
collector.
there.
Yeah, both of them.
And then I'm going to give Councilmember Bills. Will you talk to Stacy that's there at their city council about it? I'll talk to Brad Frost, their mayor, and if we can kind of ask American Fork what they've noticed about those 2 roads as they've lowered them down to 25, what that's done.
So I'm glad you're talking to people, but I'll tell you why. It's people drive 25, because if you drive over it, you get picked up.
Well, we can do this.
And I know I've got picked up twice. Yeah.
I just want to confirm we're talking 1120 North and 700 North in American Fork.
Yes. Right. They both were posted 25 miles an hour from this. So the question then comes in, Chief, if we put this down, have you, and I've got the graph that shows that our enforcement's up. Is enforcement up in just certain areas, or is it across? Are you enforcing the entire city, or are you mainly on the highways, or what about Canal 9600, 10400? What are you seeing?
We're up across the board, not in any specific location, but I'm just going to speak frankly here. We hear this from every road in every neighborhood in the city. So it's not just Madison and Canal. It's 10400. It's 6000. It's
I hear it from 6400 from my neighborhoods. You're going to hear it from 10400. I mean, I understand that doesn't mean we don't address it. That's my concern.
What I'm hearing, and Chief Patton pointed this out to me, what I'm hearing is we need to hire more officers. That's what I'm hearing.
So what you're saying, and that's one option.
I know Aaron is cringing on the phone.
So let me ask you, can our VIP, so we have a volunteer police officers that help. Can they give tickets?
No, they cannot. And there was an issue that was brought up, was mentioned twice about photo radar in Utah. Let me just clarify a couple things. Photo radar is legal under certain circumstances. It is legal on roads with 30 miles an hour or less, with the caveat an officer must be present with the device that's taking the radar speeds. Signs must be posted on either side letting the public know that the radar is being used. The photo radar must be accompanied by a photograph. And the governing body, which would be you guys, would need to enact some type of ordinance that would allow that to happen in our jurisdiction.
On radar, I have to say I have an Audi that warns me that radar is ahead. And I'll tell you, honestly, that bugs me. It's like, okay, I will slow down because I know there's radar ahead, and And the whole purpose of radar is to catch me rather than to have me find out from my car. I didn't ask for that. It just pops up on my screen, says radar ahead. And first time I saw it, I was absolutely blown away and quite disgusted, to be honest with you.
I just want to say something. I know you guys think that you're talking to us and we don't have any skin in the game and we don't understand, we don't live on there. But I just have to say, like Melissa Bond right here, my kids play at her house. And I mean, I got a text message from her saying, hey, just to let you know, our boys were on the corner of that street and cars were flying by them. And I understand what you guys are saying. I don't live on that street, but I've had my kids play over at other people's houses on the street, and it's a concern for me. I don't want to fix this problem. The temporary speed bumps, they cost $35,000, not $100,000. I want to make sure you guys know that, and that they were temporary. We had to take them out in the wintertime. We couldn't put in normal speed bumps right after it is wintertime. You can't put concrete speed bumps in right after we took them out. But it was something that we were trying to figure out. Is this a solution? It seems like we're trying to find solutions. And listening to you, one of the solutions you guys gave us was to put in the flashing speed sign to say how fast you're going. And we're like, okay, maybe we're getting somewhere. And then to find out, hey, actually the teenagers are using it to go faster. And then we're like, okay, let's put in the flashing red stop signs. And then to find out people hate those, it's not working. And then the striping and the chicanes. And so I think at this point, we know there's a problem and we're listening to your solutions and we're doing some of the solutions that we're hearing. And it's frustrating because it's not working. And we're getting feedback. People don't like it. People like it. And so at this point, I want my kids to be safe on that road. I live off of 10400 North also, and I want my kids to be safe on that road as well. And so when we talk about doing more studies and sectioning it off and trying to figure out, is this the best solution? It really comes down to, we're tired of trying to throw stuff out there and see if it's the right thing. We really want to do our research and make the right decision, not waste any money, not waste any more time, but actually solve this problem and solve this issue. Number one thing I hate about government, freaking, let's study it out and not do anything. It drives me crazy. But in this situation, I feel like if we can just get it right and get the information we need to get it right, then the solution will come a lot faster. And so I like Chris's suggestions about what you had of what is the data we need to make the right decision and find the right solution to keep all of us safe in Highland. Not just on this road, but also 10400 and also 9600 North as well.
With regard to the speed limit change, first of all, I don't have any objection in principle to lowering the speed limit to 25 on that stretch. But I think we do need to realize that Chief made a good point, which is that's not going to be the solution to the problem. That it will be part of it, but we can't just lower the speed limit and pat ourselves on the back and say that we've solved the problem. Second of all, we need to be clear about what problem it is that we're looking to solve with lowering the speed limit. If we're looking to solve the 50 and 60 mile an hour, lowering the speed limit is not going to help a bit. We just need to be clear what it is we're trying to solve by doing that.
Other council? Well, guys, let's talk about, now this is a discussion item, so anything with an action or financial things to do has to come back. Right. We need to give direction to staff of what, if you're needing more information, and you need to give a deadline when we need that information by so we can report
Well,
back.
Chris had that. Can you go back to that slide there? And I like that you had a deadline right there of April.
It was April the 8th, I believe, right,
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I just said April just in case, but yeah, April 8th is what we had talked about.
I guess my question, Chris, is if we do these next steps and we have that deadline, is this going to be able to get us the solutions that we need or provide us for a solution that we need in order to solve the problem on this road, but at the same time, not cause greater issues on 10400 and 9600 North?
Yeah, I think that's the goal. That's what we'd like to see.
And what data are we going to collect to see that?
Mostly speed data, but one of the things that we will also look at is sight distances, and that's been a concern that's been expressed that I think is definitely a valid concern. So we'll also take a look at sight distance and see what solutions we have in our toolbox that might be best to address those concerns.
I think also the speed table option, and I particularly like, I just heard it today, the speed table that's designed for the speed limit that you're supposed to be going. If it's 25, the speed table's designed that you could hit this at 25. I really like that. And by the way, if you hit it at 30 or 35, you're going to have a problem. Maybe have flashing lights. I mentioned the one before that dips down and creates a dip. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but I'd like that looked at if it's an option, because anybody traveling over it that's a speed limit, nothing happens. So they can go 30, they can go, or 25, whatever we decide on. But once it's over that, then it starts to go down. And 10 miles over, you've got a pretty big bump and you got flashing lights, the way that I saw it. So anyway, I hope those options are on the table. No pun intended.
But I just want to make sure that with those options, I want to know what the repercussions are on how it affects other roads within our cities, because then I don't want to now open this up to residents along 10400 and 9600 North. I mean, if we're going to do something along that, do we need to take other measures on those roads as well?
Yeah, I think that would be a little bit more of an in-depth traffic modeling would need to take place to see what if we do certain things that restrict how many vehicles we have on this road, how does that affect other roads in the vicinity?
Okay, I believe Councilmember Bills has some comments.
Yeah, I guess I had a couple things. So I agree with Kim in that we need to make sure that that we have solutions that actually solve the problem, and we need to see how it impacts other areas. But I'm also kind of at the point with this one where I'm like, I'm not sure everybody really wants to just keep waiting to keep studying it without doing anything. So what can we do between now and a study to actually help solve the problem? Like, it seems like the idea of crosswalks is pretty cheap, and we would be able to do that. Painting choke lines, something on that intersection that says people don't stop going the other way. Like, I feel like there are things that we can do in the immediate future, so we're not just saying, let's study it in 4 months or 2 months. When's April? When are we in?
2 months.
I don't even know what month it is. But not just saying we're going to study it in April and then it's going to take another couple of months to order signs or whatever with this solution. So I would be in favor of doing that research, but also what can we do now to stop this problem? And Chief, also, what can we do about these? And it's not just the kids, but it's like the adults too. I don't know how we slow people down, because this is it's every road, it's every neighborhood. And I just think, like, at some point, like, my kids aren't allowed to drive unless they have their phone in their trunk. Like, can we make that a rule? I don't know. And if you pull my kids over, I want you to enforce that, by the way. So I don't know. I agree with Kim. We need to be thoughtful with what our solutions are, and there are some things that are more higher impact, but I think we ought to see, I guess, from our engineer what we can do and if we can do it now. And then I would also put a plug into the rest of council to make sure that we fund the traffic calming toolbox properly when we do our budget this season.
Well, and that comes back. We have a traffic calming toolbox. We started this 2 years ago, got this traffic calming. What you're bringing up is what the traffic calming toolbox has said. You start as your first mitigation first, then you start to increase.
Yep.
And I think what you're bringing up is we haven't started with some of the first. Now, we did do the, now, okay, from 6,000 West to Alpine Highway, I agree we added some feedback signs. We added the temporary speed bumps, and then we've removed them. So that section, okay, maybe we've got some feedback, but we still have to address, like, I always thought we need to look at putting medians in there. Some of it also we have to decide, how do they cross the road there? Because there is not sidewalk on both sides.
Yes.
You know, and how there's a major trail they're trying to get to, and we have a city trail that faces it that way. You know, then you go, and that's what I'm saying, there's different sections that we have to kind of address. Tonight, I think you can say we need to stripe a little bit better. you know, I think we got some trail crossings, to be honest, not just in this area, but we need to look at some of our main trail crossings, even down our city center trail that we have going through subdivisions that we still haven't striped in those areas to say, hey, you got a trail crossing. That's just saying, we might be focusing here, but we do need to look and say, okay, can we warn at 6630? We've got flashing lights on both sides. May we put a sign that says blind a blind intersection? You know, and I don't think that costs a lot of money. I think if we have to stripe, see that there's that. Now, that's what we're going to, if we've talked about striping, I don't know why, and I'm just going to, why don't we just go ahead and lower the speed limit to 25?
Yeah, I don't understand why we can't do that. That's a simple fix.
And I understand we maybe
from
want to go talk
6,000 to 6,800.
We can talk to American Fork, but for some reason they've kept it there. I mean, okay, let's talk. We can go talk to American Fork. They've still kept the speed there, so there must be a reason why it's working.
Yeah,
they've kept their speed.
At least from 6,000 west.
That's why I say from 6,000 to 6,800. Right. Would anyone be against going down to 25 miles an hour?
No. No.
Okay. Now, Rob, do we have to have a motion on that? I don't know if we have to have a motion to change the speed, do we?
This isn't an action item.
It's not,
So-
but that's,
Right, that's why he's asking.
We have to have an action item to do that.
You have to have an action
I'm
item
checking
to
our
change
code.
the speed limit.
Okay, so that will be a code.
Here's the other thing, Mayor. Like, I agree with you. We should look at trail crossings throughout the city. But I think one thing we did when we did the traffic calming toolbox was say that we were going to process applications as they came in and focus in those areas. So I think that that's a fair thing to do as well.
I agree, and we've been looking. I think we had 3 or 4 that were going in the wrong email box. We have found that have also been submitted. You know, so we've got some other. So as Rob looks at it, and we can bring that back. We're only 2 weeks away, so I mean we can wait 2 weeks if we need to have it as an actionable item. But it doesn't appear that I'm hearing from a lot of the council that going down to 25 is something that you would not be agreeable to. Is that correct?
Mayor, can I say one quick comment on the 25 thing? Thinking, I personally drive 11200 North in American Fork, and I am encouraged to go 25 miles an hour on that road, not just because of the speed limit signs, but because of the heavy striping in that area, right? I think there's a bike lane on one side, and then there's like a center, like it looks like it does not look like a residential road because of the striping, right? And so that encourages me to go 25, whereas there is not that striping on Canal. I worry that people won't feel like it should be 25 without also adding those things.
Okay.
I'm not saying we can't do it. That was one, honestly, I'm concerned because part of the quote unquote rules of thumb we've talked about tonight, there's twofold, right? There's speeding, how much over are you going over the speed limit, and how many accidents are there? But if we just lower the speed limit without other things to encourage people to go slow, I think you're just artificially, people are going, then all of a sudden, yes, it looks like we need to add more traffic calming when I'm sorry, I'm hoping I'm making sense.
What you're saying is you can change the speed, but if you don't change other aspects to tell the driver they're supposed to go slower, they don't do it.
Yeah. Well, I think also, when you change it to 25, there's always that worry of, okay, now somebody's going 25 and the person behind him gets upset. Is that encourage more people to bypass around him, speed up and bypass? Is it going to create more problems? And so I guess it just takes me back to I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Council? Rob, have you seen anything? And maybe we just ought to wait 2 weeks.
I think we need to wait anyway, because I think there is some studying that needs to be done. And along with that, is there any way, along with what Brittany was talking about, that you can come back on the 18th in 2 weeks with some mitigation on paint? Paint. What can we do with paint to do the striping along with the 25 mile an hour that Aaron's talking about, and also for crosswalks and anything else that can do some mitigation that we could do immediately?
Striping and crosswalks, we don't need to approve. I say stripe and crosswalk as you.
I think that's something that we could do. I'm a little bit concerned that it's not the right temperature outside right now. Yeah. If it was to stay a little bit warmer like it has been, we probably could. I think one of the suggestions by a resident was at 6630 to cross traffic does not stop. I don't know why we couldn't go forward with that. Okay. I think that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
I would recommend, because the speed limit in this area has been established by the council previously by formal action, that you
do a formal action.
Do a formal action to change it.
But
and even if it's not legally required, I'd be a lot more comfortable doing that when it's been noticed.
Okay, so but they get a sign up that states that there is cross traffic that does not stop. That is something. Now, from what I'm hearing from the residents, it appears, and maybe it appears to be going eastbound on Madison. My understanding is that the concern at the eastbound of Madison, where it doesn't cross, is there concern coming on the westbound from the new subdivision up? And I think is there concern there?
Yeah.
So both ways we need signage. And that would be at 6630. And
okay, so what are next steps here? We're going to put a sign about cross traffic, and then in 2 weeks we're going to come back and say what are some things we can do right now, and then we're going to do these next steps also.
We will go do the study of the speed and traffic and have it back on April 8th. So there's one, we're going to go put those signs in. Two, in 2 weeks we're going to talk about what we can do as an instant, right now that we can sense, but then we'll do studying from 6,000 west to 6,800 to get better traffic data.
And one of those 2 weeks from now items is dropping the speed limit.
Yes.
Yes. That's on for consideration. Okay.
Yeah.
And can I put a plug between the Alpine Highway and North County to have a permanent flashing sign? Because I think that's a great idea.
With a smile underneath.
With a smile on it. Slow down. Because I saw it work today. I thought it was impressed.
Now, was that just a temporary one?
It's a temporary one.
Is that where the speed flashes or just slow down?
Well, it's the speed, but it also said slow down, and I watched everybody behind me slow down, including me. So that's one little easy fix there. I think it's what, $3,000 or something. Yeah.
They're not. Okay. Anything else, Council, you want to discuss on this item? Okay. Thank you for all those who came out and gave us feedback.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not signed the sign-in sheet, would you please make sure that you did sign in so that I get your name correct on the minutes? Thank you.
If not, you might see your name spelled weird. So,
yeah.
He'll look up your property address. Okay, item number 6B, which is city council meeting times, and that's you, Ron Campbell.
That's me. And I want to make it clear that while I personally prefer this, it really is driven more for our residents to be able to be more involved with us. These people are leaving at almost 9:30, 10 o'clock. It'd be nice if they were leaving at 8:30, 9 o'clock. If we could start at 6, and I believe, Scott, you're the only one that might be a little tight for. Could you make it 6 o'clock?
It's really tight for me. And sometimes you've had council people in the past that have had a job, like Brian Braithwaite had to come from Salt Lake. It's pretty tight.
That being said,
but that doesn't mean I'll be on the council forever.
Yeah.
Either, so.
The only other conflict that I think we want to consider as we consider moving from 7 o'clock to 6, because I really truly believe we will have more active resident involvement with us, both here, coming to the meetings, and watching us. Seeing us go until 11 o'clock at night, I don't know how much, I doubt anybody stays up that late for that except for us who has to be here. And it's also better for the staff with their hours, trying to put in their time and having to be here late, and then trying to have comp time that has to offset that. But secondly, our work sessions. We could do our work sessions rather than before our meeting, which we've done now, which would start at 6 o'clock because we meet at 7. It would be the alternating Tuesdays. So we would have to plan it better. The city would have to plan it better so that if we have a work session that's needed before one of our council meetings, we would do it on the previous Tuesday to that. And we'd do it at 6 o'clock. So all of our meetings would be 6. I think our residents would be happier. I know I would be happier, but that's not why I'm here. That's not why I'm talking about this. It really is to get more involvement of our residents with what we're doing. And the more we can hear from our residents, the more involved we are, I think the better we can do our jobs. So that time change is really driven by that. And the work sessions would just be done on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday anytime that we need to have those. And so far, we haven't had a lot of those, so I don't see that as a problem.
I support that. I just want to say, like, if you want transparency and you want residents to be engaged with us, a meeting after 10 p.m. isn't soliciting that engagement. Another thing that we can look at is it Eagle Mountain that does this. Several cities do it, where essentially you have a time for each agenda item. Once you meet that time, if the time is up, essentially you can either make a motion or you can move to continue it to another meeting, but you can keep within that time frame as well, just to make sure that we don't have residents sitting around till 11 p.m. to be able to hear their agenda item. And then also just being cognizant of staff. I mean, we have a staff member who has to sleep at a relative's house on Tuesday nights just because we get out so late that he's unable to drive home. So just things to consider. But really, I want to make sure that our residents are able to listen and have feedback, and doing it later at night isn't helping.
The offsetting concern to me is the number of residents that we rule out as candidates for city council.
That would be my
And I don't know how to weigh the relative
Well, we have other
thing
cities
of both of
that
those.
They're 6 o'clock. Draper's 6 o'clock, and
Yep.
it functions very well for them.
There are several cities that actually do a work session at 4. What they do to help move the agenda along, they start at 4. They ask a lot of their questions, and that's when the meeting starts at 7. They've already got a lot of their questions answered from staff or things that way, and it moves faster. However, I've looked at past city council members, as you brought up, a consideration we need to have is, would that eliminate certain council members? And I appreciate that the residents want to come, but they maybe come once or twice a year, where we have council members that need to come every time. And does that eliminate where we might be able to get some good candidates? Because I'm going, okay, a Tim Ball worked in Salt Lake. We had an Ann Dennis that did, a Brian Braithwaite. There's different ones. I know, Scott, you have sometimes see patients a little later.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to be
I'm a
sensitive.
little more flexible. That's my only concern, is just eliminating people that work in Salt Lake. And we have a lot of people in Highland that go to Salt Lake to work.
Maybe if we
Yeah.
do it now and they know now as they're applying, then that is something that's known.
I'm not like totally set either way, but I will say, I think you also maybe eliminate a group of people who has a hard time staying until 11 or 12 p.m. regularly. I start work at 5:30 a.m. every day, so it's hard for me to be at a meeting until midnight. Now, I'm happy to do it, and that's what I signed up for, and it's great, but I think that there's people who are affected by a different schedule on both ends. And I don't know what the right answer is, but I think it's a problem both ways.
So, Counselor, are you saying that you're amenable to put a motion on that we would start our time at 6?
Yeah, I would recommend that we put that on the agenda for the 18th. And by the way, I'm very interested in what the public would have to say during our public hearing that would go with that motion.
Or do you split the difference and do 6:30? I don't know. Why does it have to start on the hour?
Well, let's see what the residents have to say, because I really do want to listen to them. I'm pretty secure that I think I really want it to be 6, but I'm not locked in. If the residents have some compelling input that says
can I ask-
6:30, for example, I'm open to that.
And I'm asking Rob, we have a public hearing on the start of the, no.
I mean, you could ask for a public
I
hearing.
would
but
want- You could
ask
it's
for
not
public
a
comment.
standard. We
It'd
wouldn't,
be public, yeah, just
unless
public.
the council gave us direction, we wouldn't publish it as a notice of a public hearing.
Public hearing.
Yeah, I would want the public input because they're the reason that I really want to do this.
I mean, I don't think any of us, if our schedule allows it at this time, we wouldn't like to get done earlier. And I'm sure staff would be helpful. I mean, I appreciate, I get nervous, okay, as we head into election, are we eliminating certain candidates? And maybe we eliminate them the opposite way. Like you said, maybe I haven't considered that maybe we're eliminating those that have to start fairly early and they can't work at a late council meeting. I mean, so maybe it goes both ways. So.
We don't advertise how late we stay.
So, Council, are we saying that we'd like to have a motion on an agenda to move to 6 p.m.?
Yes.
I'm pausing, trying to decide if we should have a broader issue on the agenda than a move to 6 p.m. Could we have an agenda item that is revisiting the council meeting schedule and the proposed motion be moving to 6 p.m.? And that would broaden it out and allow us to consider other options as well.
Yeah,
Yes, because we would want to amend our annual meeting schedule, because I think it says on there 7 o'clock
Yeah, we'd have to amend that.
for all the regular council meetings. So we'd make it a little bit more broad. And then you could also talk about, if you want to, work sessions or how you want to handle all of that as part of that overall discussion.
Yeah.
I'm good with that then.
I also, just to think about, and I'm not sure we have the ability to do this right now, but I sure think it's nice if you advertise a public hearing, that we say the public hearing is at 7:30 and that's what time the public hearing
I
is.
agree.
And if we have to pause other items or whatever, but I think that that would also
So I
boost
think what
public
Kim's saying,
engagement.
I think that's where you say your public hearing's here.
Yeah.
And if not, you jump, you're going to move that agenda and they know that this is when that item is. Because even tonight, I mean, if they knew that that item it was going to be at 8 p.m., they could then schedule to be here at 8 p.m. If so, that's something we can have on our discussion.
Yeah.
They had to wait an hour.
They could have, no, but they could have done it at the very first in public comment.
They could, but there's reasons to do it while we're talking about it.
Well, they could have, but then they couldn't have heard our feedback.
Or heard other residents.
Yeah.
And I think we were very generous with time, because it wasn't advertised as a
It
public
wasn't.
hearing.
Okay, let's move on. So we're going to have that on the next agenda. Sewer rate combination, and that is Aaron Wells put this on the agenda. Aaron, are you there?
Yes, I am, Mayor. Thank you. So this is a follow-up. If you remember a couple months ago when council approved the adjustment to sewer rates relative to increase to TSSD, you asked us to look into the possibility of, can we combine the rates on the bill? Because for those of you who look at your bill, or who notice it, so there's two separate rates, one for TSSD and one for city sewer. So we did confirm with our accounting software and our printer that yes, we can combine those if we want and just make it, sewer. But before we pull the trigger on that, I wanted to revisit this one more time and ask the council, do you really want to do that? I honestly have a concern that that would actually provide less transparency because they are while it's one sewer bill, it's for two different services ultimately. And as we have been told by our representative on the board, Brian Braithwaite, TSSD is going to continue to increase rates for the next little while. So this is maybe me wanting to shift the blame a little bit, but when we do have to increase that rate again, as we will likely have to as TSSD increases the rate, it's nice to be able to show residents, look, the city sewer rate is staying the same, but it's the TSSD rate that is shifting. So it's to help them understand that it's a different entity that's causing that increase ultimately. So we can do it. It's just a question of, do you really want to?
So, Aaron, I appreciate your comments, but the reason I proposed it is that the rates are going up because of TSSD, but we weren't going to show the rate increase in the TSSD portion of the bill. We were going to put it in the other side. So how is that transparent? I mean, because, we understand that we've been kind of borrowing back and forth, but it looks like the city portion is going way up and not the TSSD, but they're the ones that's driving this. So it's kind of, that's not too transparent in and of itself. And I understand that, we've been kind of using the TSSD to subsidize the other sewer, but, it's kind of like, how do you explain that to people? Well, your rate went up and we just raised it in the city. And then you have to stop and explain to people, well, it was the TSSD. So if we want to do it that way and keep them separate, then I would put all the rate increase from the TSSD and the TSSD portion. But, I can understand the argument the other way because we've been borrowing against it. But I don't know, it's just kind of hard to explain in my opinion. Yeah.
I think if we're going to keep them separate, then we ought to show the TSSD portion as the actual cost of the TSSD. And adjust the numbers appropriately. And that may be difficult to explain when we make that change, but we deal with that. To me, that's the only way that makes sense, to keep them separate.
In reality, that is the true transparency. And what we're doing now is, I don't understand it. And I doubt the residents are going to understand it. I'm a lot closer to it than they are. And I don't understand why we do it the way we do it. So having the actual amount that TSSD is charging be on that bill and ours be separate, I'm fine with that as long as it reflects reality of what those amounts are, not the rob Peter to pay Paul and the residents don't know it.
So what the change went into effect in January, and now it is reflective. So the city portion went to the point where what our costs are, and TSSD was kept the same, but it was kept the same because that rate pays for TSSD. So now at this point, we are, you know, the city rate is only paying for city costs, and the TSSD is only paying for TSSD. So moving forward, if we kept them separate, then I think if I understand you, council, then we're in a good place. But I agree with you, Scott. It didn't make sense what was happened previously. Obviously, was confusing for residents, right? I think we fixed that moving forward. So if that is the case, do you want to continue leaving them separate, I guess, at this point?
Well, you can leave them separate. I don't think people care that much. I mean, you pay sewer, you pay water, you pay garbage. Yeah, I know what the total is. So I'm not sure people stop and say, because most people don't even know what the TSSD is. But if the council wants to keep them separate for transparency, I think it's fine.
I like it separate. And again, it's not just because, it's because it's more transparent. And it does when TSSD increases it and we don't. We certainly look better, but that's not the reason I want to do it. It's just the reality of what's happening, and we're honest with it.
I don't have a strong feeling either way. So that being the case, I guess my inclination would be to keep the status quo.
I always just do what you say, Aaron.
Do us what?
I just do what Aaron says.
Well, I am, I guess, the magical voice from above tonight, so.
No, there is the one that really rules it.
That she does. That she
Little
does.
Kaya. That was little Kaya. And Kaya, what did she tell us to do?
Keep them separate and
Yeah,
transparent.
Was that one? Wow, it was separate. Okay. So hold on. Have we gotten a good enough direction? Are we keeping them separate or are we keeping?
Separate.
Okay, keep them separate. Kimmy, we're going to go on. Our next one is community development update, and that will be Jay. And
Hey,
probably
thank
Rob
you,
will be
Mayor and
finishing.
Council. Aaron, myself, and Rob feel it's necessary to
7 minutes.
go over the, I will talk as fast as I can, go over the general plan discussion that we had last week with the Planning Commission. Just reiterate a few things that maybe people missed that we didn't clarify. One is that was a really first step, rough draft. We were nowhere near saying, hey, here's a document. If you guys are okay with it, let's adopt this today. Like, we were very far from that. What it was is an attempt to take several months worth of public feedback through many different avenues, synthesize that into a document where you had people who were on one side of an issue and on another side of the issue. They wanted to see, a particular land use on this spot, and the other people absolutely hated that idea, and trying to put that into a document. Some of the document was guided by things that were required to do by the state. And so it may look like Landmark was pushing on some things, and in some cases the state. Now the mayor pointed out something, I want to make a joke here, but I don't know how to pull it off on the spot. But instead of the elephant in the room, it's the longhorn in the room. The longhorn cow in the room is the Longhorn property, right? Where people were like, well, they were saying this, and I didn't see that. I didn't see it in the survey. I didn't see, and we want to, there was some talk about putting commercial on Longhorn, and I know some people really hate that idea. The survey said there was only about 38% support for that. There was a lot of support for keeping large acres, but at the same time, there was a lot in our survey and other avenues that we've collected feedback from. There's a very strong desire to have commercial in Highland. And where do we put that as we look at build out? And the Longhorn property, honestly, is one of those potential areas. And that's the type of discussion we were trying to have. I don't think it was couched correctly, and it set off a bit of a firestorm that I think people in the meeting focused on those things. And so we're coming back to you to say we're sorry that didn't go. The discussion I don't think was what we were hoping for, but we do want this general plan to be what you are hoping for. We're all hoping for. And so to do that, we propose having more work sessions between the Planning Commission and the City Council. We've talked about without the City Council's blessing on topics that will be discussed, things like ADUs that really you are the ultimate decision makers. We really feel like this needs to be a joint effort going forward. That's why we had a joint meeting last week. And so what we would like to do is discuss each item of the element. So the general plan is divided up into sections that are called elements. That's what I mean when I'm saying the word element. So there's the water element. What do you guys want to do specifically with the water element? Transportation, tonight obviously is going to get a lot more thought and discussion than other things like, environmental sustainability. Water, we sometimes have our marching orders. We received a grant from the state to help pay for our water element. However, there are some things we have to do. There are strings attached. And so we will have to meet those requirements. One thing that we talked about in order to get more, we've talked about many different ways to get resident feedback as we formulate the general plan. And one thing that we talked about was sending out Yopify survey questions a few weeks in advance of the meetings on particular topics so that we can ask questions that will allow us to better pinpoint some of the ideas that we're talking about. So I hope what I've said tonight helps allay some of your fears, some of your concerns. We really do not want this to be a document that does not reflect Highland. We do not want it to be an outside consultant coming in and telling us what the new and cool thing is to do in the area, in the world of planning and zoning and land use. We don't want it to be a document that's just boilerplate where they find and replace this city in Utah with Highland and you're done, please pay us your money. We are very sensitive of that. Some things, as I was going through the draft, I missed some things I caught that would have probably disturbed you as well, but we caught those. We didn't catch everything, so I'm sorry. But so we are committed to making this general plan, Highland's general plan, and making a document that works for everybody. And so just wanted to reiterate our commitment to that and give you an idea of what we propose as our way forward on that.
I'd like to add to this that I met with Jay yesterday, and I had a lot of questions about the general plan. And I left that meeting really understanding the amount of work that has been put into this general plan. I can't say that Jay's been successful to get all of the public input that we need, but I can say absolutely that he's given the residents the opportunity for that input. A lot has been done, and I was very, very pleased with our discussion, Jay, yesterday, with the work that you're doing. I think we're headed the right direction, and we did have some hiccups in that joint meeting, but I really believe that you're listening to the right sources and you've got the right objectives with where you want to go with the general plan after our discussion yesterday, and I appreciate that very, very much. I was actually meeting to talk about today's agenda, and we ended up talking mostly about the general plan. But I did have a lot of questions, and every one of those questions was answered, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you for all the work you're putting into it. You and Rob, we're doing the right things and heading the right directions, and I really left that meeting understanding that clearly yesterday, so thank you.
So as we look at the general plan, what's supposed to happen is the Planning Commission is supposed to kind of help put it together and as the guiding and then present it to the council. And so, but as one way we can do it, it was awkward to have the Planning Commission here and us there. I think it would be just as awkward maybe, and I understand City Council and then the Planning Commission. we had one meeting where we had them, if it be a circle or with all of us in a big thing, where you had a planning commissioner, city council, and that feels, I think, more unified. We need to work with our planning commission. They want to engage. I don't know if you've been seeing their emails. They want to engage and do this general plan and be part of it. And that's part of what their job is. And I think if we can try to keep it where it's not us and them, but we can work together to get it done. I think our comments, I actually, coming out of the meeting, I think the council and planning commission were more in line than what we thought. I don't think there was much misalignment. I think some of the concerns, I'm just going to say, was we felt like that maybe who was doing the general plan was putting their hand in it and not listening to, and I said it, you can't have 59 or 60% saying they want the Longhorn to be this way, and yet our general plan people being presenting are saying it, no, we want to have commercial. I understand there's a comment about commercial, but you took the minority and jumped to the, and forgot about the majority view on it. And I think that's where I think the planning commission understands that, as well as I think our staff understands that. And I think it helps us to become, this, guys, it's our guiding principles. I've always said when I ran, I support the general plan, and that's what I'm going to try to vote in land use. So with that, we need to be aware. This is our fingerprint trying to help the community see what we're doing land use-wise. Roads, water, what we're seeing right here on Canal Boulevard is what a city council said, this is going to be a collector road. This is meant to bring the traffic and move it through the city. Now, it's hard for the residents because it's now, that has changed, that road was never always going through, and it's now been connected. The reason we're probably not hearing from 10400, it's been that way for 20 years. This is a new road, and they're seeing some pressure on it. But that's how important this, if we want to change the designation of Canal Boulevard, it's in the general plan we do it in.
Well, it's always going to be a collector though, but we can change, make tweaks on it.
Yeah. And even the speed limit, we can say a collector road's 25 miles an hour.
Well, they are in American Fork, but
in fact, we have some of them according to the map. But real quick, Mr. Mayor, at the risk of amusing some of the people in the room, I move to extend the meeting to 10:15.
Okay, I have a motion to go to 10:15. Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. We have one opposed. It was 4 to 1.
No, I'll be a no with you.
Okay, we have 3 to 2. Okay. Are we anything else on community development?
I just want to say, Jay, I appreciate your work on this, but I thought the meeting a week ago was very productive. I didn't walk out of there thinking it was a bad meeting.
No, I don't think it was
agreed.
And I thought these people who were working on a general plan, I think they were very willing to listen, and they had their ideas, we had our ideas, and I thought it was a great meeting, personally.
Well, a lot of the planning commissioners came back and said they loved the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was
So I don't think you
productive.
need to be so apologetic.
I mean,
I think it
Landmark
was
left
good.
with their tail between their legs, if I can say that. We met with them the next day, and they felt a little stung. But, just remember, this is a starting point. You can't draft a general plan by committee. Like, we couldn't meet together and go, okay, what's the first sentence going to be of this section? Like, you can't do that. We had to have a starting point. Even if you disagree with it, it's a starting point for us to generate ideas and move forward with. So I really appreciate your feedback. And, we'll...
Just on that topic, if we are going to go the route, so Landmark, I don't know if you remember from when we selected them, they gave us like a timeline and things they would do. If we're going to hold work sessions with Landmark, it's not their scope of work. So it's going to cost the city more to have Landmark do that if we're going to break down element by element. Now, we're absolutely willing to do it. It's just the council should know it's going to come at more meetings and also more cost.
I think we need to find a balance.
Okay.
Especially if we're going to be meeting at
Council
6
seems to be
o'clock.
available to that, right? Okay. Anything else on community development? Rob, is there anything we need to be aware of?
I had something. It's late though, and it's not urgent. It's more a question of priority for council of doing a land use table.
Oh, that's
discussion
right.
about that, but it's not a thing that has to be discussed tonight.
Okay. Let's move on. Legislative update. As we all know, we're in this, and Kim, you can kind of help chime in. And Ron, some of the things that the League of Cities are really following, and we should be following as a city, is going to be our fees. There's legislation coming about road fees and about public safety. Council, we need some feedback here. There was a Slido that was presented two weeks ago that in this legislation of the road fee specifically, the LDS Church is asked to be exempt as well as all things. The concern the league has is if you give an exemption on this one type of fee, can that go into other aspects such as impact fees or other things. Now, the Slido, you need to understand now, and I'll be transparent. I voted yes that we would go ahead and let them be an exempt, and I'll tell you why. What we're hearing is you have 240 cities, and only about 20 have road fees at this time. And so I did not feel like we had the support from all of the league to go to battle on this. And so I was looking for the least path to get it so we don't lose our road fee. I was on the opposite. But what were the other two?
I voted no.
No to allow.
No to allow the church to be exempt.
Okay.
I mean, I have the Slido results from ULCT with my meetings. 75% of cities say this is a high priority for them. And then from those, and then excluding churches, 60% support it though.
Okay, so 75%, but 60% support given the church exemption.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason is they don't feel like it's a battle to go to battle on.
But the amount that they pay is not consistent with the amount of road use that they actually
We are trying to
use.
get legislation passed. Last year, this legislation got held up the last week because of the specific issue.
And that's too bad. I feel like we're being held hostage then.
I understand.
I don't like
So
that feeling.
let me ask a question. So if you exempt the churches, and I'm not going to express opinion one way or the other, but if you exempt the churches, why wouldn't you exempt the schools?
That's the other concern.
And I think the wording on the survey was actually churches and nonprofits.
It was nonprofits. It did say nonprofits. So that is coming down the path as legislation. What we're seeing from what Kim says, yes, we see it as a concern, but 60% are saying do not use our political capital as the league to go in and fight against this. Just FYI, I just thought that
realize what that's saying.
they do, but that is why they asked the Slido question. Okay, the other legislations, there are some land use, but they don't seem to be moving. There's land use out there for ADUs. That if they are in a class 1 or class 2, which we are a class 2 city, the ADUs would be, a detached ADU would also be permitted. And so that is moving forward. There is land use that also states that across all class 1 and class 2s, that anything that's 6,000 square feet would have to be approved. That would be the approved lot. Now that has not come out of committees. It can go away, but I'm just saying that's something that's tracking land use. Kim, what are you tracking land use?
I mean, I think some of these are just not going to get out of committees.
Okay. Is there anything you see that we ought to
Well,
be discussing?
I mean, there's the one on the garages.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you can.
That's because of Pleasant Grove.
Or essentially saying that the city can't mandate you to have garages, kind of thing. There's that one.
And maybe you'll get a home. I don't see with what the cost of land is in Highland. If they decide not to do a garage, I don't think it will be economically if in a resale. Okay, that's on the land use. And we'll talk about
one
this.
quick question about the land use. The 6,000 feet square feet by right. I understood by right to mean that as long as it meets zoning requirements. Was there a separate piece in there that requires us to change our zoning?
Let's have an R140, R1, even
Okay.
R140.
The summary on the slide said 6,000 square feet by right. So I just, okay.
You could still have like frontage and other types of utility requirements, but the lot size would become R16, essentially. Okay.
What do you have, Kim?
Well, you also can't require garage in exchange for housing affordability as well. So it's a lot of it has to do with housing affordability. Mm-hmm.
So some of this stuff we need to be aware of because there's problems with this high density stuff.
It is.
Traffic, congestion, what we've heard all night tonight.
I know.
So we've got to kind of push back on this stuff.
So just that will be. We haven't been seeing them moving, but that's we're just early in the session. Some other are there other bills other than the school district bill that you're tracking, Kim? That
I mean, we talked about broadband is one of the big ones right now. So that one has to do with Utopia, all those cities who are doing their own broadband, and essentially it's requiring voters to approve a revenue bond to fund that municipal broadband infrastructure. Just putting more requirements and criteria in there in order to make it harder to do.
So if we were to do Utopia, you have to go out to vote to the res.
Yeah. And then I think
something similar. It's like if what Lehigh's doing with Strata, it would have been voted on by their residents.
And my understanding is that this is another case like we were talking about with exempting churches and nonprofits, in that this is the first time that we're encroaching into revenue bonds and needing voter approval.
Yes.
Did
Yes.
I correctly understand that?
Yeah.
Chiefs, are there things you're seeing in legislation we need to be aware of?
The only thing that I think you would be interested in that may be a budgetary item, I don't think so at this point, but House Bill 40, which was amendments to last year's school safety bill. In the interim, and I'll be quick, during the interim, there was a lot of, the bill passed out of committee that would put a lot of the responsibility back on the local law enforcement authority, which would have cost us a lot of money. We've worked with Representative Wilcox over the last few weeks to get a substitute to that passed out of committee on passed out of committee Wednesday of last week that I spoke in favor of, that brings a balance between local law enforcement entities and the school districts and the sheriff's office. So I think we're good.
Chief Patton, I know there's a big one that is coming down the road that deals with wildland interface in this, that they would collect money for the county. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, they're going to collect money from the private property owners.
So if they're in a wildland interface,
the county
they have
will
a special tax.
Yeah. I'm interested in both chiefs' response to 267. Do you have any unions that would be impacted by 267?
Law enforcement's staying out of that fight right now. So,
You're staying out. I'm not. I'm against it. But
So, we've not gotten involved with that. We don't think it's going to affect. I think the fire chiefs feel a little bit differently. As a matter of fact, I know they do, but law enforcement's staying out of it.
I assume you're against it, Chief Patton. I couldn't be more against it than anything they're doing up there right now, because it affects UEA, which has been a good organization for the state of Utah when it comes to education. Are there downsides and are there problems? Yes, but let's fix the problems. Let's not throw the baby out in the
Chiefs,
bathwater.
anything else we need to understand public safety wise that's coming bill wise?
Not.
I mean, I know we have about a month, and probably that first week of March we'll be saying, hey, every phone call get going. Okay, now we're going to move, because I think all of us would probably be interested in the school district bill. Brittany, I don't know if you're up a little bit. I have received, there was a new update on Grover's bill. And Brittany, you fill me in on, this is what I'm understanding is in the bill. This is that they got 2 years for employee protection. Does
that include administration employees?
No, not administrators, but the protected class, which would be, I think,
The teachers.
the teachers. But no, I think it's also your counselors and those custodians and
Classified staff.
What? Support.
Are they called classified staff here too?
That's what I think they're classified staff. But that's in there. Okay, this is a big one that we need to be aware of. There is what's called a weighted per student, whatever. There's a 1% WPU. That what would happen is to help in funding the reorganization, we would get 1%. In the proposal, and this was talked about in the meeting, was that as the central district and the west would get 1% of the WPU as well as the south. But 50% of that 1% would go to the new reorganization, I believe, of the south. Is that what and so we would, let's assume it's $1 million. The central would then give $500,000 to the south as well as the west. But then that would be no other reimbursements or payments.
But that WPU is used to fund the education, and we're taking from it to fund the oversight.
Fund education to get it ready for the district.
Yeah, and I understand that. It just seems like I wish we had a bit better source than the WPU.
That's how but it's also the source. One concern we've been hearing was that we'd had in the legislation was that we were going to compensate the South for some of their startup costs. This is what we're trying to say. This is the compensation. This is the solution. We are done.
I get it.
It's legislation. It's compromising.
It's more palatable than what was there previously by far.
Everyone will be responsible for their own startup cost. There is in the bill about reimbursing municipalities, such as if we hire some consultants to help us through. Everyone should have received in their email the assets and liabilities from Alpine School District. Did everyone receive that email? So there might be we might need to have some staff or some time to go through that, to verify or to go through that division. And so there would be, with that and how that we would be reimbursed. If we spend money to do that, we get reimbursed for our study, and we'd get reimbursed if we hire consultants. There is also language about the board being sworn in at certification. So if they get elected on November, 6th, they are then sworn in the next day. This is the new board. The existing board members, if they are expiring, they then are extended 6 months. There is one that's a little controversial, what is called the mayoral board. I'm not sure what the mayoral board does. Well, but that is a weighted mayoral board. It is based off of population. So let's assume that the population or the weighted property tax of Lehigh is 7 times greater than Cedar Hills. In that mayoral board, they would have 7 times as Lehigh more voting power than Cedar Hills. I don't quite understand that. Do you understand it at all? I don't even know. I'm not sure what the mayoral board does. Is that where we would hire people?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure how it ended up.
Okay. Are there other things in that bill, Brittany, I haven't brought up?
I feel like the hiring of a
superintendent?
Yes.
Or but that was a may. I understand that's a may that they may be able to hire. So it's up to each different school district if they want to hire a temporary pseudo superintendent.
But it's not a must.
It's not a must, it's a may.
Gives them the option if they're in search and they just want somebody in the interim.
It's only really till November. In my opinion, we're just trying to get the elections till November.
There are some people who think we should hire a permanent administrator from
watch over everything during the split.
During the split, like a full-time with a lot of qualifications,
and then there's a lot
very
of feelings,
expensive.
And council, there's a lot of feelings that we just need to try to get minimum we do until we can get to the board. Now, the other thing is there is talk about, and there seems to be about naming the school district as a temporary name. And they're going to be reaching out as a survey probably for 2 weeks out to the public for them to garner names. Doesn't mean they get to choose what the popular, but they give names in, and then you will probably see the interlocals come together, which we each have one representative from the interlocal to vote on a temporary name. We're the only school district. The west has chosen Lake Mountain. The south has chosen Timpanogos. And so there is a feeling that we probably ought to try to get a placeholder name. Doesn't mean it can't change by the board, but that is kind of what came out of that board.
So can I ask a question? So Brittany shared with me some maps, how they're talking about setting up school board representation. I just want to say this. I think Highland needs a representative on the school board and not be divided up in several sections.
And I believe...
Yeah, they do. There's only 2 options, 90% and 10% for Draper this side, or up 100%. I'm fine with either one, because even at 90%, whoever is going to be elected is going to be from Highland. They're not going to be from Draper. So we're going to have that representation.
But I thought there
whether
were
it's
6
90 or
options.
10.
There were 3 you shared.
They're out on social media. There was someone posted out on social media the different options. I know that Brittany, so there's different groups meeting with Grover. You have different groups that are trying to meet about the board, how the board maps are being put together. And so there's a lot of time being put in by, and there's a lot of who's doing what. We're trying to figure out what's going on. But Brittany has met with, I think, and been very proactive with different cities saying, hey, how do we make sure we're representative? We do have, we have, from the city side, Heather Newell from Lehigh and Smith. Kelly Smith from Cedar Hills is representing the city's sides. And so we have been vocalizing to them about what you're saying, Scott. Can you try to keep Highland together as much as possible? And so we just need to be aware of those. That will be moving forward. Those will come out and be done, by the 1st of March or 1st, because they'll be voting on by the county. The county gets a full total say on it.
They're hoping they have final maps by next week, I think. I think it'll take longer than that, but.
Okay.
I'm just grateful we get a 1.0 or a 0.9. Very grateful, because American Fork got a 1.5, and that's going to be half I mean, how does that work when you represent two different cities and you've got one board member trying to represent two cities?
Well, we just have to make sure the proportion works, because where Highland gets a full board member or a 0.9, that could be theoretically split between 2 cities or 3 cities. So it's making sure that the split is the way that we.
Are they looking more at junior highs? Is that kind of, what are they looking at?
So I think everybody's looking at something different. I think that there's a group of people who thinks that looking at the city boundaries should be the primary thing, staying within the city boundaries, because those school boundaries are fluid.
And I think that's what Heather is doing, is looking at the city boundaries.
Yeah.
Looking at the
So-
results that she has and her options. That's what I see.
She's just one voice.
Yeah,
There's
she's
still
one
other-
voice, and
understand
I think it is coming to consensus about what all the cities have as their priority, right? Making sure they're all on the same page, and then realizing that this is a committee that will vote, but then it will go to the county commission ultimately. So making sure they understand that cities are behind whatever decision is made, and making sure that we're behind whatever decision that interlocal is making, not the redistricting group is making.
So your resident, Nikki Brammer, is one of the residents on the board. Who's the other resident?
It's Nikki, and there's a guy from AF.
AF, and then you have Stacy Bateman. It's a city that's lives in Lehigh, but is also on the Alpine School District. And then you have Max Sims, who's kind of the chair. Does he get a vote, or is he?
He gets a vote, as does the representative from the county.
And then it will come to county commissioners, and that's, we just got to watch. We got legislation going on with the school district, but then we got this boundary alignment. So if there's anything else that needs to be communicated.
I just appreciate all that Brittany's doing, just doing the rest of that.
I appreciate it too, and we're 7 minutes beyond our limit.
There's one other new gravel bill that came out, HB 355. So that's one we want to look at as well.
Gravel bill?
Yeah, because
Is it about the tax?
it has to do with expansion of vested rights for sand and gravel operations. So local governments are concerned about it.
It takes our land use away.
But it extends, that they can extend the use of the gravel pit? We better watch that one. Yeah, we better be watching that one. What? No, it's SB what? HB 355. Okay. Tomorrow we do have a league lunch tomorrow. I'm sorry, a chamber luncheon that we are going to be recognizing Harris Orthodontics as the business of the year. I appreciate the council. I think we had 2 or 3 chime in on that. Is there anyone, I'm going, is there anyone that also like to attend tomorrow at 11:30 at the Hampton House? Okay. We will be recognizing Harris Orthodontics as our business of the year. So it was kind of fun on different. Do you know that the top selling Invisalign in all of the state of Utah is Harris Orthodontics? And I asked him, is that because people in Highland have more crooked teeth? But okay, well, it's 11:30 at Hampton House. Yeah. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Scott, second by Doug. We got to do a roll call, right? No, we don't. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned.